conserve that land. It isn't just land, but it's also land that protects watershed resources. And so hikers obviously can take advantage of those resources that are protected. It's a great place for wildlife, timbering as you mentioned. And so for all those reasons, it's not just a piece of land, but it has lots of other assets to it. I also want to just mention, last year, working with Audubon Pennsylvania and Keystone Conservation Trust and many other conservation groups, we did some research looking at Dauphin County. I know we're in a different county. We looked at Dauphin County, and we estimate that the natural resource value of Dauphin County is $954 million, and that's annually. That takes into account fishing, hunting, paddling, canoeing, etc. And I just want to give you an example from the Dauphin County Return on Environment Report, where we looked at these natural resource values. Hiking is estimated at $63 million. Hunting is estimated at $52 million. Fishing, $26 million. And kayaking, canoeing, $26 million. And this is on an annual basis. Now, I'm not saying those figures are going to accrue to your area, but you will see a portion of those kinds of figures accrue in your township. So I strongly encourage you, to support this effort. And as I say, Beach Conservancy, they're a good organization. They do what they say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that didn't sign in who wishes to speak? Thank you all. Then item number 7 on the agenda is appointments, resignations, correspondence, proposals, case and action forms. We've got a couple items in advance of the meeting. The first is the Duncannon Fire Company has done for a number of years an annual boot drive on the square on Black Friday. They're requesting the permit to do the same from 7 a.m. until approximately 7 p.m. on the square, Dave Keene being the point of contact. Is there any wish for action on the permit request?
Is there a fee associated with the permit?
I don't know. There's not a fee typically with these permits?
No.
No.
So good.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Williams, second by Mr. Crotharmel to approve the special events permit application for the boot drive for the Duncannon Fire Company's Adopt a Family program, Friday, November 24th from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. Any further discussion? All those in favor give their consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Pass that down to Kathy. The next item is, many of you may have received just yesterday, I believe, the announcement or the kind of save the date from the Pennsylvania State Association of Boroughs for the 107th Annual Conservation and Exhibition, the theme being Put Your Heart into Governing. That's in June of 2018 at the 1st of July. Some opportunities there. We don't have the full itinerary, but I think especially for the incoming council members and the returning mayor, it's potentially an opportunity for next summer if you're interested. So I have that information if anyone would like it. The next is, we have a memo from the Planning Commission, Perry County Planning Commission. This is something we receive, I think, every year, offering planning consulting services by the commission. There's two options: a full-time service agreement for $1,000 for the year and a part-time service agreement for $500 per year. We have traditionally not engaged in this simply because we have very little need for planning services in the build-out borough. I want to bring it forward if anyone wishes to act on it. Does anyone want to see it? Okay. And the other item I have, Kathy just distributed this evening an email, or a fax I should say, from Dissinger and Dissinger. We had some potentially sensitive personnel discussion last month's personnel meeting, and we're trying to work through the process of how do we have what would be executive session material discussed at a committee level, and I learned a lot from Mary. I had some conversation with Mary, just trying to make sure we were doing everything appropriately because we're advertising the committee meetings, something we hadn't done, to the best of my knowledge, prior to 2016. The definition is pretty clear and has been for some time. If you read the Sunshine Act 65, Consolidated Statutes, blah, 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 defines an agency, which applies under that act, as the body and all committees thereof, specifically indicating that all of our committees fall under the Sunshine Act as an agency of the borough. I think there's in the past been some confusion about that, and I know in the past the borough has had committee meetings that were not advertised, that were not published, that were not clearly following the rules. But I think for the last 2 years anyway, we've been pretty good. So I just wanted to reinforce that that's not just our preference on doing things, but also a requirement of the Sunshine Act. If there's any questions, I would encourage you to talk to Bill to discuss that. But I asked for a kind of a position statement or a clarification from his office to explain that, to make sure that we're all on the same page. I think we're in good shape as far as that goes. We advertise everything, we've been meeting in public, we've been reinforcing that, but I just want to reinforce the need to do so.
If I could just add, if I may, Mr. Chairman, also keep in mind that this applies when you have a quorum of an agency. Now, an agency is a committee, your committees are 3 members. A quorum is 2. So if 2 members of a committee meet prearranged to discuss, not to take action, to discuss borough business, that meeting needs to be advertised and public.
Very cumbersome potentially.
Yes.
And that's, I think the key is prearranged and generating borough business. If you want to go fishing or, go on vacation, fine, but if there's any wish for deliberation or action regarding borough business, we have to be very mindful of the requirements set forth.
So, does that mean anytime, if two, like me and Christie are on the same committees, 2 of the same committees, do we need to advertise both those committees every time? at the same
They
time?
are.
Yes.
So like, we're on utilities and finance, do we need to advertise the finance meeting as also a utilities meeting?
I mean, if you're going to discuss utility stuff at the finance committee.
There's probably a lot of
It's
overlap.
one committee, though. It's just,
Oh, I see.
we
Okay.
merged it,
Oh.
2 committees together.
No.
Or
No,
we
not
restructured.
those two.
Didn't we put utilities and streets together?
Yeah, but I'm talking
Finance.
utilities and
No,
finance.
not,
But at the utilities meeting, if something finance related came up, could that potentially be an issue?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
If you've advertised the utilities committee meeting and you want to talk about finances, you shouldn't. Unless you would advertise the
I don't know how,
finance.
I don't like, I guess then they all, like, because they're hand in hand, I don't know how you.
Look, a lot of advertise them both.
the finances
But
of the
he's
utility
saying do we have to
operations.
cross-advertise them as both a finance and a utilities committee?
Mhm.
So can you
Well-
just do like we normally do and say other business to come before the committee?
Well, you probably should, but I mean, if you're going to discuss finances at the utility committee meeting, you have a problem unless you've advertised.
Well, if it's utilities
It's
financing.
utilities costs.
Right.
I mean, I don't
Okay.
know how you can have
I
a
get that.
utilities cost, discussion without dollar signs.
I think
Rogowski.
Well, then it's utility business, okay?
Right, that's absolutely,
Yes,
yeah.
That's fine.
But if you want to work on the general fund budget, you can't do that.
Yeah, you should.
One meeting a
It's-
month, that's good enough for me.
It's ridiculous, but there you are.
Okay.
I will tell you, I think you've all been in compliance. I
I mean, we
there's been-
advertise this meeting as a meeting of the council and sewer authority.
Right.
We do the same with utility, we've tried, so.
Yes, you have.
The committee meetings, though, the discussions in them have always been on topic. I mean, I have not been at any where you guys have ranged off into another committee's area to discuss it, so.
So again, just, not that I think there's anything out of order here, but I wanted to make sure we had some clarification in the from the solicitor.
And understand, just so that for the public, that they didn't do that in the past is not a horrendous criticism of the past councils, because a lot of councils, a lot of townships for years did not believe they had to advertise their committee meetings. There, for a long time, were actually very mixed opinions from solicitors about it. You'll still find some who argue, well, there's case law that deliberation means this or that. We choose to play it safe and say if we're discussing it, that's deliberation, and we advertise all the committee meetings. But that doesn't, that's relatively new in a lot of municipalities. In the past, that was not always the practice, and it's kind of a refinement because of the Sunshine Act.
Is there anything else under item 7, appointment resignations, correspondence, proposals, and citizen action reports?
I was going to say it for my report, but it's correspondence, just to let you know, we did receive a letter from DEP with officially our permit for the new main that was installed, which we had been verbally given the okay previously.
That's for the water main on Chestnut.
Yes.
Very good. Anything else under item 7? Move on then to item 8, general reports, the borough engineer, Mr. Rogowski.
Mr. Chairman, in my written report on the sewer side, the wastewater treatment plant solids handling project is going well, it's progressing nicely. and we anticipate receiving equipment submittals here in the next week or two, which we're still on track to start some construction, probably end of the first quarter in 2018. The Elm Street sewer rehab, pursuant to our last meeting and some discussions at the joint authority meeting last night, bid documents are on the street. We anticipate having a recommendation for council. We'll probably go through the joint authority in December and come back to council in January, so we have some direction there. Unfortunately, we had the pre-bid yesterday and we had 0 contractors show up, so we're beating the street a little bit to get people interested. On the water side, of course, as everybody's aware, the Chestnut Street project, we had a little bit of some growing pains with that. We were able to finally get the main shut down and do the tie-ins. That work is complete, with the exception of the final restoration, which will happen in the spring. So, all in all, that went fairly well, even though it didn't feel like it. I know many residents were frustrated with the length of time of the boil water, but based on the age of our system, it legitimately probably went as well as we could have it expected. We only hit one thing we didn't know about, so that's pretty good.
I think and I know Chris did a good job of trying to stress to those that were concerned, and there were certainly some complaints and some concerns, is that this is an improvement. This isn't something that broke. This is a long overdue improvement and a substantial improvement to the system that is, a short-term inconvenience for a long-term improvement.
Exactly.
So we really tried to stress that to those that had concerns.
As a dovetail to that, we still need to do our semi-annual maintenance flushing. And I know the last thing anybody wants to do is kind of stir up the water again, but that really should be done essentially. We had water moving in directions it doesn't like to move in this borough. So a lot of stuff was stirred up. We've had issues related to meters clogging and other things. It's going to be our recommendation that we take some time here before it gets really cold to do that flushing over the course of a couple of days. And really kind of clean the system out, and then we can reach back and fix any other issues that might be out there in the system to get the sediment issue cleaned up. So, once again, kind of a short-term pain for long-term good. Locust Street retaining wall, you will see an action item later on the agenda under the Utilities Committee about not necessarily doing anything at this point, but a suggestion had been made previously to install some monitoring points on that wall, just so we can keep an eye on it. It doesn't appear that funding is going to be available, at least in the near term, to do anything with that wall, but we should set some points that borough staff can go out and measure, basically, and be able to tell if the thing's moving. Unfortunately, the way that wall is going to fail is the toe's going to kick out. It's going to slide down like this, so it's not going to peel away like that, where you kind of see it. So that's why we're recommending that action be taken at that point in time. At the joint authority meeting, the Stone Mill Estates project from Penn Township, the developer was there. It does appear finally that project is gaining some traction and some legs. They formally came with their request to the borough to consider amending the intermunicipal agreement to which this borough council is a party to, which will need to be done because we're changing the distribution of flows as part of that project. And then also, in conjunction with that, there's a couple of sections of main within the borough that need to be improved, slip lined essentially, that they're willing to do on behalf of the project. So
That was going to be my question, if they were putting forth funds.
yes. They're actually going to do the work. It wouldn't be a fine
Right,
taking, but there's really 3 legs on Clark Street from Butcher Shop down to Market that will need to be. There's 2 of the 3 need relined, and they've offered to do that as part of the project. So the authority did consider that, did think that was a fair offer, and moving forward, you'll see some movement, like I said, on that intermunicipal agreement coming back to this body for some action at that point in time.
The work that they would do, would there be oversight from the borough?
Yeah.
On that project to make sure that it's.
Yeah, and we'd probably coordinate with Penn. We'd actually, simply because Penn is going to bond that whole entire project, and clearly we'd have to coordinate with the solicitor, but, in those cases, instead of us just holding a bond for a small piece of the bigger picture, we may want to try to come up with an agreement or something to have Penn hold all the bond money. That's clearly some discussions to be had, but it would just might clean things up a bit. If we want to hold the bond, that's fine too. So, but they would also post escrow for any kind of monies that we would expend in the process of revising the municipal agreement, inspections, all of that stuff would be covered by the developer. So. And the last item is well number 1. You may be aware, some members of council attended a meeting. We have some issues going on at the next building, which a permit's been issued to correct those issues. Well number 1 is currently offline. We've had these spikes in pH, which we need to address, and it appears that the best way to do that is actually moving the caustic, moving the chemical right where well 1 is at. In order to do that, we need to build a bigger building, which we've been talking about for several years now. We met with the utilities committee, we made a recommendation that we can, if we do some modifications to that building, we can also avoid having to do anything with this pitless adapter that's inside that building, and would like to ask council for action to be able to authorize us to prepare the necessary permit to make modifications to that building with the intent that that work, the actual work itself, would be done by borough forces. And I understand some of the materials are available now and things like that, but we at least want to get the process moving. Our current permit is an emergency permit for 6 months that we're operating under, so we do have a little bit of a time-sensitive issue to continue to move forward. So we'd ask for council's action this evening to be able to authorize that to move forward.
Question, on the PETSI report, on page 1, there's, the mixed stations noted as some internal piping issues need addressed per DEP. A permit was obtained to move the caustic feed point. Since this was complete, the pH results are much steadier and chemical usage is lower. What was completed?
Well, 4, we were feeding the pipe in that mix station. We were granted an emergency because we couldn't stabilize those readings.
Right.
We were feeling that it was going past our measuring point into the standpipe, because we started taking measurements in the standpipe, and they were very hot. So that told us it was too close. So we got the department to allow us to move that injection point down to well 4, so that it's injected and then pumped up the hill, and then at that same sample point, now our pH has balanced out. So it has proven our thought that we were just too close, so now that's what we're thinking with well 1. Instead of doing it all in that little, nobody could find the permits for what that mix station was, so now that
It was
sort of
expensive, I
frees
remember
us up to make modifications, so yes.
Very good. I'll move to authorize the engineer to submit the appropriate paperwork for a permit for the modifications necessary for the mixed building.
Second.
No,
Well 1.
I'm sorry, well 1. Yes, I'm thinking mixed building. Well 1.
Second.
Any further discussion? You've got a motion with a second to authorize the engineering firm to move forward with a permit application for the modifications necessary for well 1. All those in favor give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask to be excused as well, I had made a comment to you earlier.
Yes.
Be okay?
Does anyone have anything for the engineer before he departs this evening? Thank you. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, everybody else too as well.
Moving on then to Public Works Operator, Mr. Kevin Hunt.
Hoping everybody has a copy of our report for last month. One thing I am watching again on the water system, does everybody have an updated report that has a percentage loss on it?
Yes.
We're not producing any more water than what we have in the past couple months, and I know Greg and I have talked. We did lose some water during the Chestnut Street, so right now I'm saying I know that's gonna add to some of it. The only other thing I can say is I didn't see this past month's water meter reads, but I know the previous month we had a good bit of them that were low. So I'm sort of sensing that we might be losing finance on, you know what I mean, the meters are reading very low numbers and we're not billing accordingly, so it's reflecting in that number. If I was seeing any sort of production increase, I'd be thinking we'd have a leak, but we're holding real steady. And we haven't had issues with the reservoir and the standpipes.
Jeff, are you aware, do we have any kind of, and maybe Chris knows, I've never heard discussion of a replacement plan for meters. Is there anything that's been discussed to that?
We talked about it a little bit at the last meeting, coming up with some sort of plan to do it, but we have like 20 of those in process.
Right. And I didn't know if there was even record of when different ones were installed, some that were.
Mike has a pretty good idea, but I don't.
Like,
Pretty much all the ones that are in there right now are new and were installed 10 years prior to you starting the plant?
On the water plants.
And Harrison Heights would have been newer than that, because that's a newer development, but, so the majority of them were done at one time prior to that.
All of them in town.
Okay. Very good, I'm sorry, Kevin.
That's okay. Um, That's all that I really have on the water system. The wastewater, we did get those digester fill pipes removed off so they don't freeze up for us in the winter. The manholes on Water Street, the Chestnut Street project consumed a lot of our time as well as the borough employee help time to get those bolts off those manholes that are seized up. So that project, it's not forgotten, it's just we were tending to other projects. But that is not forgotten, and that is sort of holding up. We need to get those off so we can investigate the I&I, and then from there, we also need to access those through the smoke testing. So it's sort of a hand in hand, not forgotten, just past month was a little hectic with Chestnut Street, so. The only other thing that I don't have yet, and I have a request out for quote for, is one of the SBRs, we've been having problems with it properly decanning. We replaced, there was a spare actuator limit set on hand at the plant. We put the new one on and the problems have disappeared, so I am obtaining a quote for another one to have as a spare. We have two tanks down there, so we put a new one on. History has told me that when one fails, it's not long after that, so I want to get pricing, bring it up. I don't have any idea if it's a $100 item or what it is, so I want to get pricing and then bring it up to you guys to say yes. Lead time, I guess, is going to be my biggest concern. If it's off the shelf, then I'm not going to be so excited, but if we're finding it's 4 to 6 weeks out and one fails, I don't want to be trying to limp along on one tank for that amount of time, so.
If it's 4 to 6 weeks out, we should probably be getting 2, is what I would hope to do, so.
Right, so let me get that information back, lead time, price, and then we can present and talk about it, but right now I haven't gotten anything back yet,
Yes.
so.
It may be, very well be that the price is such that we already have it budgeted and we don't need to come back next month for council action. If it's a large number, come back.
Very good. Anything else?
Nope, open to questions?
Is there anything, I don't see anything specific on either page that you need anything from us tonight? Okay.
No.
Any questions or anything for the operator?
With what we were just saying, if that is like a cheap part, I'd like to see us have 2, if it's like, we use 2 of them, I'd like to see us have 2 as backup.
Because in this case,
Backup,
we had
just-
one fail, we had a backup.
Yeah,
And
let's
they
have
would
2
replace
so
it.
that if we need to, we can replace both at once.
Wasn't that one of the, in one of the early, when I got here, wasn't that one of the requirements that DEP had for us, that they wanted us to have a backup of those?
Yeah.
So we'll make sure we do that.
Very good. Anything else for the water and wastewater operators? Thank you, Kevin. We've been out on the borough solicitor, Mr. Dissinger.
Nothing to talk about.
My term here ends the end of next month, and there are 2 items I would love to have at least some movement on. The first is the escrow check that you inherited from Susan Smith.
Yes.
The second is the crash that took place on Market Street and some recovery of, I think, about $10,000 and work that was done there from, I think, again, you inherited that from previous council.
I will report on that next meeting,
Perfect.
your last meeting.
Thank you. Anything for the solicitor? Very good. Fire Chief, Mr. Warren, Mr. Warren, is that
Yes, I sent out an email Wednesday, November 15th, I guess. Yes, and really, when I did that, why I did that was because I hadn't been able to get to any meetings. So I just wanted to joggle some memories and just what, I had mentioned it to our representative at the public safety meetings a couple times. I had never gotten any feedback back if it was mentioned. I assumed that it was by the reply that I got from the email. And just to reiterate the email, I 1 year ago today, or at this meeting, I was here asking for the same thing, that the fire tax be set at 0.65 mils, that we agreed upon might not have been the right phrase to use, but was discussed and kind of set where it was before it was adjusted at the at the council meeting in November of last year when they set the budget, or December, whichever meeting that was. Just to reiterate a couple things that the fire company has really not received outside of this year, when the final payment is made. As of today, we have not received that, so we've received $18,750, 3 checks of $6,250 to date. So that is less than the $23,000 we've been getting prior. But with the full amount coming, it should be at $25,000 if that's the case, if all the tax money was collected. So there is a slight increase of $2,000 compared to previous years if that comes to fruition. The request of the increase, the additional monies is going to the apparatus fund. And when I mentioned that in the email, in 2010,
I believe that was the first year.
2010, Kevin Bissonnette was our president at the time, and he and myself had approached the borough, Penn Township and Wheatfield Township, discussed increases in funding, and that those increases in funding would go to the apparatus fund solely, nowhere else, because we could not move any other money out of our money that was coming into our administrative budget. That is pretty well set. And just to give you an example, the $25,000 that we will receive from the borough this year, our insurance bill is $25,000, in excess of $25,000. So just to give you just some perspective on that. Penn Township has increased the funding dramatically in that time, and so has Wheatfield Township. And that money has been used to pay the loans on the rescue pump, which will be paid off next year at this time, and well ahead of the 10-year note that was on. You know, the equipment that we have that we're asking to replace, we're not asking to add anything new, you know, any new type of apparatus. The existing equipment we've had in the firehouse has been generally the same since 1984, with the only addition of the aerial apparatus in 2003. So the 2 pumpers, the tanker, have been here since 1984 in service. The addition was the aerial in 2003. With that being said, the addition of the equipment and the equipment being kept current, not necessarily brand new, but current and maintained, has allowed, when the ISO reevaluation was done in 2014, it did lower the borough's ISO rating a full point from a 7 to a 6. We are a couple points away from lowering that to a 5. And if we get the credit for our hose testing, that will happen. And I will, I don't know if it's 2 or 3 consecutive years we had to do it and show the records. And I will get with them as soon as we're complete with our hose testing this year and see if that can be done. We've established, you know, we talked about providing information and everything. We established a fire committee with our municipalities in 2015. And that was the borough, Penn, and Wheatfield Townships participating. Quarterly meetings. Out of that, the one issue that came up was the borough representative at the meeting had requested some sort, and I think we've even discussed that here in these meetings, about finding a similar situation to the Duncannon Fire Companies with multiple municipalities. We found it up near State College, and we worked it out, and we came up with a funding formula. And because I had always been working under the premonition that, or not a premonition, but just my own figures, that Duncannon Fire Company protected 40% of Penn Township, or of our area. 40% was Penn Township, 40% was Wheatfield, and 20% was the borough. Well, the funding formula took three measuring sticks into consideration. That was the assessed value of the municipality, the earned income tax of the municipality, and there was one other one. couldn't remember what it was. But what it did, it come up with a percentage, and you took the percentage of all the percentages, and that gave you what the borough, what each municipality would be technically responsible for in the overall of the fire protection. The borough, without digging through all my papers, it was either 17 or 18%. So I wasn't very far off with my initial figures. But the fire company has an annual budget, and in the average area of $250,000. It can be up and it can be down, just depending on grant money and et cetera, what flows in. 18% of that is $45,000. This 0.65 mils, if I am correct, would bring in roughly $33,000. So it is below, the 0.65 mils is below that figure. And I'm not asking to match that figure. I just want to use that as a reference point of where we're at. The equipment necessary, we've had, the borough participated in the fire study in 2003 with Penn Township. All that information is at your disposal. The fire company was established in 1927. As far as I can ever remember, the borough's contributions to the fire company started in the 80s. It may have started a little earlier than that. I don't think anybody here is going to remember that. I'll have to dig things up. But as far as any contributions made by the borough, Penn Township, and Wheatfield Township didn't come in before 1980 or the early 80s. So essentially you got over 50 years of fire service for free. The borough did, every municipality did. Enough about the volunteers saving municipalities, hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars. We are volunteers. We have no paid staff, zero. None of the money that comes in goes out in salaries for anything. No administrative fees, no salaries, nothing, zero. It all goes to the operations of the fire company. And when I said about the, I just figured mine up on my documented hours. And I saved just a marginal salary, not what I make in Harrisburg. And it was over 10, like $12,000 just in my documented hours at the firehouse. That doesn't include when I get out and get the mail, drive into the firehouse, do some reports, and do, whatever, the 2-3 hours that I go there a day and don't document it. That doesn't count any of that, and a lot of guys do that. The borough contribution, the only raise we've had, and I had, last year here, we had a whole big spreadsheet, and the budgets went back, I think, to 2005 or 2007. I couldn't find that sheet. But the last raise that the fire company received was to counterbalance the utilities, and that was somewhere around 2007. 2008, there you go. And before that, so we have not received a net contribution, except for this year, as it turns out, will, in over at least 12 years, as far back as I could find on that page. And that's, if you just take the Social Security cost of living increase since 2005, that's almost 30%. That's just the cost of living off of Social Security. I looked it up, that's the only thing I could really find that was published. Don't know what a normal cost of living, that was basically Social Security's COLA increases from 2005 is over 30%. And it's just, so I would just hope that this money is going towards new fire apparatus. It's not going anywhere else, the increase in funding, and that's it. To replace our 44-year-old tower truck, which actually we're not replacing it totally, we're remounting the aerial and using the hydraulics on it that will all be rebuilt, and it'll be as good as new. There's been 4 or 5 other ones done identical to the way we are going to do ours, and there has been, I actually contacted one fire company in Darien, Connecticut. They have no issues. They love it. It'll be on a brand new chassis, so the motor, current emission standards, all safety standards, everything will be current, and the pumper at the township station, which we bought from Lebanon in 2002. It was 7 years old. It's a 1995, so it was used pretty good before we got it. And we've maintained it now for 15 years. And it's getting to the point where it could need some major work. You know, and plus the motor's an old diesel, just like the tower truck. It stinks up the firehouse when you start it up, etc. So we're just looking to replace what we have and have it in a rotation, have it last 20 to 25 years, get a decent amount of money for it. We did it, we did explore, we talked about having those two combined into one apparatus, the possibility of that. Other fire companies have that. It would not fit our situation because the rig would be too big. We would not have a small pumper that would fit under the arch at Crumley Brothers right down here and get in lanes and in the country, out Creek Road, a lot of places where that small engine out there will fit, that none of our other fire trucks will fit, except for like the brush truck or the utility. So we've been at this, well, I've been at this scenario for well over 10 years, just trying to get this plan in place. I think we have a golden opportunity with not much more investment to get it done, and we are pretty much there. Just that if we can just keep it bouncing up. Like I said, our rescue pumper, we got it in 2012. We took our loan out where the first payment was made when we got it, and so it should have been paid off in 2021. It's going to be paid off in 2018. We apply our state grant to the apparatus loans, which we continue to do. And hopefully that apparatus fund will keep growing a little bit of money at a time. And the next rotation in 15 years down the road, whenever we replace something else, maybe we'll have a chunk of cash to put down on it. But we don't have that luxury right now. So that's just my concern, to have the fire tax set at 0.65 as opposed to the 0.48 where it currently is. I believe it's 0.48 or 0.49, whichever it was set at. And just hope you will consider it strongly.
Last year when you came in, you were looking at getting a new tower and a new pumper, right?
We explored, we had and the committee had been going for well over, a long time.
I just wasn't aware that had even changed, so what, it was originally gonna cost, with the two new apparatus, the original idea?
It's about the same.
About the same,
We've spent, we had 3 different options with the aerial device. 2 new ones and remounting arms. And the remount actually came in the least amount by 25, 30 or so $1,000, but the second option on the brand new one was $1,056,000. So we are at least 200,000, if not 225,000, under that with the remount of the area. And the pumper was basically 518,000, and that is low bid. But we didn't go with low bid, we go with who meets our spec and who, in a nutshell, the companies we're going to be working with are the same ones we've been working with. So the person that maintains our aerial right now will be the same person to maintain the aerial when it's remounted. The company that does our maintenance and repair on the rescue pumper is going to be the same company that we deal with the new pumper. It's going to be, and what the new pumper will bring to the table is it'll have a lot of similarities to the rescue pumper with the pump, the gauges in the cab and everything as far as the operation of it, that pretty much when you get in one driver's seat or the other, things are going to be in very similar positions. That takes a lot of guesswork out. And then plus you're conforming to all the current safety standards, current emission standards, with using the depth fluid and the diesel and all that kind of stuff, the seatbelt indicators and all that in your safety stuff in the both rigs. We're not doing this just to go buy something new. This will fit into the plan, and we finance it. Both of these apparatus together will be financed for 15 years. We had this. The rescue pumper was our second new. Well, actually our third, the tanker, but that was with a federal grant. But the second new rescue pumper that we've had consecutively. We financed them both for 10 years. We're putting the 2 rigs together for 2 reasons. One, the price is higher for 2 of them. 15 years will spread the payment out, keep it low, and we'll be able to pay extra on it, bounce it down, pay it off earlier. And number 2, with the rescue pumper being 2012 and the tanker being in '06, that end of that 15 years, those two rigs will be due to replace. So we won't have to replace any of the other rigs within that time span, unless something unforeseen would happen, but we have insurance for that stuff. So,
Byron, I'm sorry. Question for my clarification, and I think for everybody's clarification. You indicated that other than adding the aerial, that since 1984 your fleet hasn't increased. I don't think that's correct.
well, the main apparatus.
I think you meant the number, like
The pumpers and the tankers.
pumpers and tankers,
Yeah,
Okay, because in '84 there wasn't a traffic unit, there wasn't a utility, and there wasn't a duty chief vehicle.
right.
Just wanted to clarify that. That's
We
not
had
exactly what you said.
We had a brush truck, and I think
Right.
we had utilities in and out somehow, somewhere at different times that were, yeah, but, yeah, 1984, I'm concerned with the main, yeah, the four main vehicles.
That's what I thought, but that's not
Yes.
exactly what you said.
Yes.
Very good. Anything else?
That's it.
On that, Byron asked me to come along too on that. Him and I were here in 2009. I know it was a different council. I'm not even with Duncannon Fire Company anymore, but that .65 mils was discussed as far back as 2009. When we presented the proposal back then, it stepped up to a half a mil, .6 to .65. And that was, for 2009 budget. Now we're going on 2018 budget.
A lot of things have been discussed for a lot of years.
That just
And
wanted,
let me offer that on our table tonight, we've got ordinances to discuss for increases on water, increases on sewer, increases on trash, as well as a approximately half-mil general tax increase. So keep that in mind.
And I do have that in mind, because I am a borough resident. And I've talked to many of you at different times in different places, and I totally agree that we don't charge enough. We don't charge enough for our rates to keep the stuff the way it should be. It is cheap to live here compared to, not take the school district out of the equation. It is cheap to live in this municipality off the municipal end of it. With the tax and the utilities, I mean, you just figure out some other things like garbage and stuff like that. You'll spend just as much money going to Municipal as buying garbage bags than you do paying your trash and stuff like that. So it is.
Well, the reality is that if you move a half a mile into Penn Township, it doesn't cost as much to live. Property tax, and you don't have utilities. Now, there's a question of, what services do you want? But I would argue that if I moved into Wheatfield Township or Penn Township or Reed Township, any of the adjoining municipalities, that I can have the same exact house and the same exact property and cost less.
And that's a good assessment, because obviously their taxability is better because they have more people and less, more and less.
We had a motion earlier this
We
year.
have less and more.
We had a motion earlier this year to explore, consolidation with Penn Township to spread out those items. 3,300 people in Penn Township, 1,500 people in the borough. That motion failed. So that, that's what's here. I'm on a 7, so we'll see how things go tonight. And I hear you, Byron. I understand where you're coming from, and I understand what you're trying to do, and I, for one, appreciate the efforts that you're making, the efforts the fire company's making. However, I don't know that the borough can realistically support everything that we should potentially have.
I get you.
Anything else for the fire company?
Oh, one other thing.
Yes, sir.
The Duncannon record last week, I was misquoted. You were there. You heard what I said. I was misquoted in the, you probably didn't even read it.
I read the article.
I did not request Wheatfield Township match Penn Township, and that Penn Township gives us $150,000. I made the comment that the municipalities are similar, and I advised what Penn Township's tax was. Nowhere did I say that money comes to us, all of it, and nowhere did I say that I'm requesting that's what they do. So, I was misquoted in the record. And I had a conversation with the Penn Township supervisor, and that's one of the first things he asked me about. When I said that, he said, I figured as such.
I would encourage you as well to reach out to the reporter and clarify that. I don't know that they'll print a retraction, but, have at least, providing the information and explaining may help him to report, differently or better or more accurately next time.
Yep.
Anything else for the fire chief? move on to the mayor, Mr. Capuano.
So I did get one more letter of recommendation, or letter of interest for junior council. So I have been in contact with the other two from the school, and I have not heard back from them yet. So I still have one more. Only other thing is I did speak to 124 third graders, for those of you that saw it on Facebook. And I want to say for the record, I am married and I don't have a girlfriend.
And you do like donuts.
And I like donuts. So that was asked in the thank you notes, that was asked of me by 4 different people if I was married.
Is there a P.S., is there a Mrs.
And
Capuano?
if you need proof, I brought proof for everybody. There is proof that they actually asked me those questions. Christy saw them firsthand. So, that was very interesting. Some people thought I lived in the White House. Some people thought I knew Donald Trump. Some people thought that Donald Trump was coming with me. So,
Didn't they want to know if you came in a limo?
they did want to know if I came in a limo. Yep. Fun stuff.
Anything else?
That's it. Trust me, that was enough for 2 hours on Friday.
I'm glad it went well.
It did go well. It did go
I
well.
passed that buck right to you.
Yeah.
We also have a codes enforcement report from our codes enforcement officer indicating a fair amount of activity for October. Is there any question or feedback for Chris to back to the code enforcement?
I'll just want to say something, I think this will be where it fits. I know some of you have seen complaints about the citizens made about the signs that were posted about a lost dog.
I've heard about it, I haven't seen
They are posted on many poles in town, every pole. I had asked Chris, and if she was coming in, I was going to address it. I had asked Chris at our meeting, because that, to me, fell under utilities. They're utility poles. I had asked him to look into getting them removed, and that's how the whole thing came about. So this was not Chris going out and looking for a fight. This was me asking the manager, can we get this taken care of?
And enforcing the ordinance that's in place.
Yeah, and I thought we were fair, and it'd been 2 months, and I really do feel that, like, I'm sorry for her, but I just wanted to get this on the record, that this was me. I had asked Chris to do this, so it wasn't Chris going out and looking for it. I had asked Chris to go out and do this. This was...
There was, we talked about this briefly during the personnel legal meeting tonight, and that it really turned into a very emotional response on the whole matter. And I understand, I have a dog as well. I understand the connection with pets. There are a lot of signs on poles. There was a tremendous printing budget to put all the signs on poles, and our ordinance is very specific in the zoning that signs aren't to be displayed on poles for a variety of reasons. Nails and tacks and staples damage the poles and cause entry for water and pests and things. Paint rips the creosote coating off of the poles. We know we have poles that potentially are an issue, so causing more damage to these poles is not a good thing. I think that Chris was probably a little more forgiving than he should have been from the outset with that, understanding the loss of the dog, and it turned into him being made out as the bad guy. So I appreciate your words.
I told him that if somebody would show up to talk about it, I would handle that. I counted myself just driving from either end of Market Street.
I lost count.
I got from driving from that end to Cherry and this end of Cherry, I got to 65, and that's only on Market, going up to Lincoln essentially, and that doesn't count High Street, which I know has some, and other streets that have them too. And there's a good chance I missed some because it's not easy to count them when you're driving. So I thought this would be the place for that.
I agree. Thank you. Anything else for the mayor or code enforcement? Jackie, did you have something?
What's the outcome of that, of the signs?
The signs are going to be removed by the borough crew in the near future, and we're going to stick fast to the ordinance and the intention of the ordinance, and not permitting that. There's a good reason, not just that it looks cluttered, but there's a good reason for not having them. Not that we're insensitive and hate animals, for the record.
I wanted that to be clear. This is not. A lot of us own pets. I mean,
I don't think there was any question at this table. I will say I received an email, an unpleasant email about the manager and replied to it, copied the personnel committee, and haven't received a response. If my guesses are correct, the young lady that emailed me doesn't even live in the county. So
I know there was a lot of non-residents that were involved in social media
presence. That's a hot topic.
Yeah.
Very good. All right. Thank you, John. Secretary, the easiest report of the night.
No report.
Wish us happy Thanksgiving or something.
Happy Thanksgiving or something.
Duly noted.
Our longest report of the year.
I would like to say that someone sent their borough bill without a stamp, and it went straight through the postal service and to us.
I wonder who did that.
I thought you pointed at me, I'm like,
No,
that
they put mail in without stamps and it all made it to their destination.
You do recognize that's a federal offense.
I didn't do anything wrong.
But yet, if you're 3 cents short, you go back,
Right, yeah. I
because
just
they take the time to weigh them.
completely forgot to put stamps on it.
Move on to the manager, we have a written report from the manager, Mr. Quirk.
Thank you. You have my written report, and most of the items that are action items are elsewhere on the agenda. A couple of things that came in after the report was distributed to you. The first thing being that AMP, which is the company that we purchase our electricity from wholesale, I received correspondence from them today saying that in 2015, they sent us correspondence to designate them as our agent in dealing with the electric suppliers and so forth. It's apparently a requirement of our agreement with AMP, our service contract, and it was never executed, so they're asking us to execute it. I would like to ask council for authority to execute that, subject to review by the solicitor, because frankly, when I read it, I'm not really sure what the heck they're asking us to sign. It's a pretty complicated agreement, so I would like to have Bill review it first. So that would be the first thing I have for you.
Chris, when's our contract up with them?
2021, I believe it is.
This is a 5-year.
We're at the end of year 2, for 5 years.
Yeah, it's we're in a make the best of a bad situation, I guess is the way to put it. I've learned some of the history, and apparently the borough at one time was locked into a variable rate contract that was projected to just continue to go up and was going to be extremely expensive. And so the council, looking for ways to mitigate those high rates and that fluctuation with the variable rate, we still have some fluctuation, but it's on the charges for what they call PJM charges. It's a very small part of our electric supply. But at any rate, at that point in time, there was a third-party company that came in and provided a service to a lot of municipalities of buying out those contracts as hedges, so to speak, and stabilizing the rates. So the good news is our rates are lower than they would have been had that not happened. The bad news is it was all purchased and projected prior to the gas market erupting and energy prices coming down. So our prices, if the trends continue as they are right now, may be a bit higher than other people in the next couple of years. At the same time, we have no guarantee that the natural gas prices are going to stay where they are. I don't think, if we look at the oil companies, and that's who owns most of the natural gas, they're not in it to not make money. So, it's really, you're projecting, you're guessing where you're going to be, but that's where we are and where we are till 2021, so.
And I believe there's actually a PP&L rate decrease this month. So,
There may be.
just for the record.
Although that would be, is that PPL their base generation charge for people who don't opt for choice, or
I'm not sure.
because most of their people, well, they have choice, I don't know how many people
PP&L doesn't
take
generate,
advantage of it.
they only transmit it.
Yeah, they have a standard option if you want generation. I don't know if that's Talon, because that's an affiliate, or where that comes from, but at any rate, if we can refer that to Bill,
I'll move to refer that document to Bill for review. I made the motion, Mr. Williams has seconded the motion to forward the documentation received from AMP of Ohio to the solicitor for review, to assign them as essentially our agent for electrical negotiation. Any further discussion? All those in favor give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
we already talked about the Chestnut Street project. Appreciate, for those of you that are here, if you're not the people who I talk to after hours almost every night during that project, I appreciate you for not complaining. Those who did complain, I appreciate. Everybody was very civil, very understanding. It was a very trying situation. I would, quite frankly, if it had been me as the resident having boiled my water for 2 weeks, I don't know that I'd have been as understanding as most of the residents of Duncannon were. So thank you very much. I ran into a lot with that project that we didn't expect to. We went into it thinking we'd be able to shut down 3 blocks. We had 6 homes that were connected. They were the only people who were going to be impacted. We thought it would be off for 1 day, 2 days of boiling water after that. And the next thing you know, we're discovering that we can't isolate sections, and we end up having to shut down about a 25 block area of the town. And then we have further issues because with the water being rerouted, the pressure at the far end of Lincoln Street, which is a dead end, which the Utilities Committee was talking about, looking into at some point if we can rectify that situation. At the far end of Lincoln Street and on Carver's Hill, we had people that had no or very little water pressure, especially that first day of the shutdown. I think it got better as we rearranged kind of some of the valves and how we were shutting it down. But again, thank you very much for your patience. We're working hard to try to improve your systems here, and it's not an easy task. They have a lot of work to do. We're not alone. If you look at the media in any city, any town, you'll find infrastructure issues are everywhere. I think the one thing that we are very different is that we have a council that has the courage to tackle a project like this, because they're going to get, I'm sure you guys got complaints from people when while it was shut down and so forth too. And I worked previously in a municipality where there were council members who would not take on a major project because they didn't want the backlash from inconvenienced residents, even though it was a badly needed project. So thank you to council for supporting our efforts to get things fixed. We had the note and minute corrections about the ACC. It's actually the UCC. Just to update you on that, the Perry County COG did meet and reconstituted its appeals board. So we now have an appeals board in place through the COG. If somebody does have an appeal, they handle the whole process. They have an application form. We refer them up there. It is a $1,000 fee to file an appeal, though you may get some of it refunded if the administrative costs are less than that. They calculated the fee based on the solicitor's costs and the transcriptionist, court recorder's costs for the hearings that they would have to have. And that was how they came up with the estimate of that.
Do they have a solicitor assigned?
They do.
Who is it?
I don't remember the name. It's whoever it was when they first constituted the board, but then the board was already established. They just haven't had any appeals. They're very rare, so we do have that situation. To update you on the buzzards, I have been in contact with the USDA's wildlife people. It actually is just, I guess, fortuitous to us that the 2 guys in the Harrisburg office who deal with the buzzards are both local. One's from Penn Township and the other's from the borough. And so I've been talking with them. They've got some ideas. They're going to come up and meet with us. This week it appears that the buzzards, at least from the one USDA guy, because he goes by there and looks, he hasn't seen them and I haven't seen them in the morning coming in. I did see them last week. He's speculating that, he said they can be migratory. Sometimes they will winter over, sometimes they won't. He thinks they may go away for the winter, so if that's the case, we may not do anything to deter them till spring because there's nothing to deter. Most likely the deterrence would involve hanging what they call an effigy, which is basically a fake dead buzzard, because buzzards won't hang out where their dead people are, or dead buzzards are. That keeps them away. Yet he told me if a wing falls off of that effigy, they all come back. That's how smart they are. They can tell that.
They were there this afternoon.
They were there this afternoon, okay.
Yeah, they're up at
then-
Frank's yard now.
Well, and
Frank?
the other thing they talked about was what they call a campaign of harassment, which is basically firing off pyrotechnics to disturb them and keep them away. What they told me was they think that if our goal is to get them out of in town and back up on the hill where they were before, we probably can do that. If our goal is to banish them from the area completely, we're going to have an expensive trap and relocate program like Dauphin did, and they're actually revisiting that because they're starting to come back now in Dauphin.
Is there any way we could relocate them just out of the borough?
build a wall.
Could we build a really big tower somewhere?
We could try. I'll know more after we have that meeting, and I'll report back then, once we have a plan.
Bother us.
Another item,
We'll let revitalization handle the budget.
another item, I received some correspondence from the company that our benefits are through, and I discussed this with the Personnel Committee. It looks like there may be a possibility that we can reduce our premiums. Our premiums did not go up, I'm not even sure, I'd have to go back and compare, but I think they might have gone up less than $100. And that's just because the way the group that we're part of, our insurance rates are based on the ages of our employees, and so it's preset by the bands, it's not by our individual experience. But it looks like we may be able to save money. The analysis that has to be done is to make sure that the plans that they sent us as options to look at cover the doctors that our employees use are included in that. In particular, two of the options that they gave us that are a little less expensive are Geisinger Health Plan options, but I'm not sure that they would cover Pinnacle or Hershey Med, especially with this UPMC coming into the area and the history they have of feuding with other insurance companies. So I'd like to take a look at it, and if we can save some money without reducing the benefits to the employees, do that. But what I would like to ask for now is for council's approval to renew our benefit plan, not to spend more than $2,516.76 per month, which is our current plan. So the only way we would change would be if we're saving, if one of the plans that are less expensive. Out of the 6 options they sent us, I think 3 of them were less expensive. But again, I'm still...
Does that 2516 include the increase, the proposed increase?
This is our proposed rate for next year.
Rate for next year.
Yes.
So moved.
Second. The number was $2,570.16.
No, 2,516 and 76 cents.
All right, we have a motion by Ms. Young, second by Mr. Croftarmel, to authorize the manager to review health insurance and find the best program for our situation that doesn't exceed the amount of $2,516.76 a month
That's a bargain.
for 3 employees. It is.
That's what mine and my wife says alone a month. I know, because of my age.
He couldn't hear you.
Any further discussion before that gets out of here? All those in favor give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Just as a heads up, it looks like the camera is dying, or the phone is dying.
If the battery pack dies, I don't know.
Just let you know.
Thank you.
Chris, if you want to hook it up to this, you can. I have a battery there.
Until we switch it, just a real quick update on the newsletter. It went out the end of October. We put it off till later in the month because we wanted to get in about the budget and about the Chestnut Street project and so forth. Our plan at the beginning of the year was to have 4 newsletters, to do it quarterly. We've had 3, and then we had the mini edition that went out, the 1-page one that went out in September to announce some of those meeting dates that we wanted to inform people about. If it pleases council, my plan would be to have 1 more. It may just be a 1-page, but depending on the outcome of your decisions on the budget, I think it would be good to, if there are changes from what we had from the original draft budget, the article that was in the newsletter, to let the public know those changes and what will be in the budget that would be for final adoption in December. So that would be my plan, would be to put out, like I say, probably a 1-page, maybe front and back, but keep the cost down, but to get that information out. I honestly don't think we have enough material to fill another full newsletter at this point for any more this year.
I'll be looking for action.
Not necessarily, just if anybody has an objection, then we'll back off of that and do something different.
You
But
put in, with the code red, I wasn't getting the code red calls for the past couple things, so I went in and re-signed up.
Same here.
Can we put something that we
Yes.
had these issues, we understand, we hope you understand, can you go sign up? Just because, I mean, if I'm not getting them, that means something else.
And I'm waiting to hear from, I'm waiting to hear back. I sent an email last week. Kathy discovered, we had a customer that came in, a resident who came in who said that they lived up in Schoolhouse Apartments and hadn't gotten the calls. And they tried to sign up and weren't able to sign up. For some reason, it was telling them their address was outside of the borough. Kathy tried it and confirmed what the resident was telling us. I'm guessing, and this is strictly a guess till I hear back from Code Red, but they're supposed to be given the database from the phone company for all the landlines. And I think they submit that request based on addresses. My guess is they're looking for a Schoolhouse Road, and that's why Schoolhouse Apartment is not showing up as in the borough. So I sent them an email clarifying that, explaining it to them. If they can't fix it, then I think we will probably do an in-person visit up there to take around forms for people to sign up, and we'll help them get registered so they can get it. So yeah, we'll put something in, and also, because the other thing we're trying to get them to resolve, there used to be a spot on the admin page where you could remove yourself from Code Red. And we always liked that because we would tell residents that if they wanted taken off, that they had to do that. That way, we don't run the risk that somebody's, maybe the ex-husband's angry and calling and taking his wife's number off the list, or, who knows, who could be doing it. That way, they're responsible for removing themselves from the alert list. That option's no longer on there right now, so we're trying to figure out. Apparently, if you sign up under their new format, if you sign up for an account now, it does give you that option. But if you signed up under their old format, it doesn't take you back to a page that you can do that. So we're trying to resolve a couple of different issues with Code Red. So we'll work on that. We did hear from more people than I thought we would about not getting calls. So, I have one other thing I want to add. Last year tomorrow was the November meeting date for council in 2016. And at that meeting, council approved the hiring of this guy, Mr. Kroboth, our finance director. I just want to thank him for his year of service. He's been a tremendous addition to our staff. And congratulations on your almost anniversary.
Thank you, Chris. It's been a pleasure.
And
a challenge.
I think we'll keep him.
I hope so. That's all I have. If anybody has any questions for me.
Thank you for the manager. Mr. Warren.
The new water project, which hydrants are on that system, and has there been any flow tests done on them?
They are going to be flow tested when we do the flushing that Greg talked about. We will get you that information as soon as it is compiled.
And which ones are they? I assume it
I can't tell you.
down Chestnut,
Kevin, do
One
you know
in my
which ones
house
were new?
is one of them.
Chestnut and Prospect, Chestnut and Lincoln,
Yes.
and is there any other
We
ones?
brought we brought the hydrant back on board down here at
Cherry
High
Street.
and Cherry.
And so those are the only three connected to the increased pipe?
Well, directly to that pipe,
Yeah,
yes. But that bigger pipe should give us
yes.
more pressure elsewhere as well. But yeah, as Kevin mentioned, the one at Cherry and High had been damaged, and when we went to, there was a car accident, they replaced it, but apparently the valve was damaged and it wasn't known, so that's been fixed as well.
Did you run the bigger pipe to that hydrant also?
No,
So you just hooked on to, okay, so the two hydrants on Chestnut Street are the only two really affected by the bigger water?
correct.
Directly affected, right. Anything else from the manager? Move on then to the treasurer's report. We have before you October 31st, 2017 weekly banking review, as well as the statement of revenues and expenditures and the log of certificates of deposit.
Make a motion to accept the treasurer's report.
Second.
That's subject to audit. Subject to audit.
Second, so good.
Yes, sir.
Motion by Ms. Young, second by Mr. Williams to accept the weekly banking review, the treasurer's report, subject to audit. Any further discussion? All those in favor, give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We also have bills. We have the selective check register. Yes, those are in the same packet. Dated 10/31, or date 11/17, but through the period ending 10/31. Any wish for action?
Motion to ratify and approve the bills.
We have a motion.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Young, second by Mr. Kirkhoff, to approve and ratify the bills as indicated in the selected check register. Any further discussion? All those in favor, give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have standing council committees, facilities and fleet, Mr. Epley.
Well, I have only one thing, and that is we were going to do a general review of the electrical system in the new garage, and since those personnel is not available, I'm going to leave that for the new council.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Anything for facilities and fleet? Finance, administration, communication, Ms. Young.
In your packet, you got a bunch of stuff. The first is the proposed 2018 budget. So I'll do my best to explain it, and Bob can jump in if I botch it. So the third column is your annual budget. That's what was budgeted for this year. The year-to-date is what happened through September 30. So the 2017 percentages and budget remainings are through September 30. The 2018 proposed, it's the handwritten one that's in there, that's what the committee is recommending for the 2018 budget. He also did provide you 2016's numbers, just so you had something to kind of compare over the 3 periods to. So the proposed 2018 adjustment, that was, what was that?
Several things. There was a request by Mr. Williams on behalf of the Parks and Recreation Committee to include certain dollars in the budget that were not part of the original budget, so that's in the proposed column, the very last column. And then there's also a couple of additions having to do with creating a small pool for separation payouts. You'll recall Paul left us this year and had accumulated quite a bit. We have one employee who has a significant amount of accrued leave, and it was suggested by our borough manager that perhaps it would be wise to set up a pool, not for the full amount of that potential liability, but for part of it. So that's the lion's share of the adjustments.
On page 3, the 14.3 added to special events / Winterfest is the one for Parks and Recreation. Right?
Yes.
Correct.
What's the 15 added for utilities?
I think that's maintenance of parks.
It's maintained.
That's of parks.
Okay, I apologize. What's the, that's almost $30,000 between the two, and we're...
Right, it was, there were quite a few special event and maintenance related requests from the Parks and Rec chair.
What were some of those?
Well, the special events one, that includes no revenue to coincide, right?
Right, these are all expenses.
That's just, but, like, I think that with that was, we set that aside, but in hopes to get it back, right? I mean, we just didn't budget for that. Do you know what I mean?
No.
Right now, when they do the parks things, they've come out mostly a wash. This was to increase that so we have more funding up front, and then, hope that you get your money back every time anyways. But if not, then it's actually completely budgeted, where in past years it hasn't been completely budgeted that way.
So are there any new events, or are there events you want to do differently? I'm trying to understand, we heard from the fire department about the potential for no increase, and we're doing a $30,000 increase on Parks and Rec. So I'm just trying to understand.
Not a $30,000 increase.
I have the listing here. I thought I had provided it.
It's a $29,300 increase.
Yeah.
But
Here's the, this
10,000
is,
in there for a mower.
That's
Right.
not including the
For
mower.
maintenance.
The mower's a different line.
yeah, mowers under capital. The mowers in under
So
capital.
if you add that, it's 39,300.
So this is the Parks and Rec 2018 budget request. New Year's Eve, $1,000. Spring Fling, 500. Car Show, 1,000. National Night Out, 800. Movies and concerts, 2,000. Sled Fest, 1,000. Street Fair, 5,000. Halloween Parade, 2,000. Winterfest, 1,000. So for those special events was $14,300 in total. Then there was also a request that council had already instructed me to put in the proposed budget for a mower. It was estimated by Mr. Williams to be $10,000 on this list, but council at its October 17th meeting told me to make it $15,000. And then there's upgrades to both parks to include electricity at Cooper Field and walking paths repair, to be repaired in the lower park. So that upgrades for the parks with $15,000.
So
So
the
the-
maintained parks is actually upgrades for the parks?
Yes.
And the mower's still in at 10, I
Yeah,
believe.
the mower.
Mowers,
Oh, no.
Mowers-
No,
mowers
that's-
part
sorry.
of, mowers in there
Page
under
two.
capital.
Yeah, got it.
It looks like we're at $1,100 in the year-to-date for the special events. I just feel like that's a big increase for 1 year, especially with the other issues we're facing and the rate increases and things. I'm not volunteering to do it, but I wonder if there's opportunity for sponsorship or underwriting to offset some of that. I don't know how much that's been explored. I don't want to stymie what you're trying to do. That's not my intention at all.
That's fine, Craig.
I've just, it's a big increase. It's 15, snow removal wages. I mean, the mower is not just the parks.
Right.
But the increase of,
Special events, $14,300
it's a $13,500 increase.
and $15,000 for the upgrades to the parks.
And that's a about $10,000 increase, well, $9,000 increase from this year. Am I alone on this? If I am, I'll shut up.
No?
They were all in there last year and they were cut.
Right.
Same numbers last year as this year. There's no change in numbers.
We were, if I read Chris's report correctly, we were about $7,000 upside down on the raw numbers.
Yeah, your
Yes.
deficit's on page 3.
On the bottom of page 3 is
Right.
Yeah.
the new deficit.
Which prompted the proposed approximately half-mil tax increase of, which should net about $20,000. So we'd be potentially $13,000 to the plus, but if we're able to cut those two items by $7,000, $7,300, we'd be really tight, but we could potentially not require a tax increase.
Is there any potential to do the park upgrades over a period of 2 years as opposed to putting everything we were planning on into this year? Just to try and find some kind of
The
middle
main
ground.
thing that's gotta be changed is the electric. You can forego the lower end part.
The lower end park was just the repaving of the trails?
Repaving and finish the pavilion project that was started 3 years ago.
Okay.
Hey Craig, could I amend my request also? That,
You can do whatever you want.
I know. I thought of this too. The majority of our money will not be needed until we make that first payment in October of 2019. So if we can step up to 0.65 mils by 2019, that's where I'll be. So that would be satisfactory to me. We don't have to go that high this year. or, you add a little bit this year and a little bit next year, whatever. I just wanted to throw that out there too, that I'm, not gonna be totally dissatisfied one way or the other, but.
You could probably take the street fair out too.
The street fair.
It's $5,000.
Yes.
It's in the special events.
Okay, it's part of the special.
Correct.
What was the street fair?
That was a project that the fair company, the rec
Oh,
board,
like
and
place
then
the
we're all
carnival.
gonna look.
Okay.
Yes, 3-day fair.
Okay.
And I don't think it's gonna happen this year, Warren.
Yeah, we're kind of behind the 8 ball already.
So, you could delete that.
So that would cut that number down to 9,300 instead of 14,300.
I don't know if it'll make any difference with the electrical. I'd have to talk to them and see if that's covered. But it's possible we might be able to get some DCNR funding for the pass in the lower park. They have a lot of programs for parks, and they have a special program that's geared just for very small communities. I know a lot of it's geared towards planning and towards like playground equipment and things like that. But I can touch base with them. We can explore other funding options to try to be able to pursue some of this other stuff, Parks and Rec too.
That, of that 15,000, what was the amount you were assuming for the electric part?
About 10,
So 5 for the walking trails.
but hopefully, Mike has got conflicting costs for what we need underground with that. We're planning on doing all the work ourselves.
Right.
That's just materials.
Is
I'm
that
not sure
is
where
that
we're
something
at.
that could be done in 2 phases? We do half the work? No? Okay.
That's one straight pull from that pole back to the building. That's the problem with it now.
Right.
It's been done in 4 different spots. We have a bunch of bare connections underground, like for the pavilion. They wanted power for the pavilion, so they just went over and dug a trench, stripped the
Placed
wire
it.
down, tied onto it. So you have 200 amps feeding a 40 amp box on the pavilion to start with. That current should go to the band shell and then be distributed
sub
from
panel.
that point. Yes.
So what if we took the maintained parks, that part, down to 10,000?
That would eliminate the deficit.
Well,
Well,
you really don't even need to take it down that far. You take it down to 12.5 if you want to take that.
I wasn't looking at the deficit as the only number to hit.
10's worth, I believe.
Because I was gonna propose that if we eliminate there, and if we eliminate some special events, that we give 5,000 to fire and 2,500 to EMS in additional contributions.
Next year.
That's what I mean, this year, in this budget we are completing here.
I don't have a problem with that.
That'd be about,
So you're thinking about doing those contributions. Right now, all the fire comes from the fire tax. EMS comes from the general fund. So you're thinking about doing the fire tax plus a general fund contribution. Is that what you're?
no. This would be, the fire tax would increase to give 5,000 to the fire company, and then their general fund would increase to 2,500 for EMS. So it would be whatever the millage is, it's the
So
two
the
different rates.
general millage would decrease a little bit, and the fire millage would increase.
You might need a
Correct.
break to
Yeah.
run up and do some calculating.
And that's about a 10%, I think, for both, 10% increase.
It's
25%, yeah,
25% for
originally in my head
EMS
was doing
is-
10%, it's 25%.
It's 20% for fire.
Yeah. And I was doing those as round numbers, if we want to do 25% for each and do exact, that's fine, I just was doing round numbers.
I understand. Several other people at the table.
Are you okay with that?
Sure, I'm fine,
I mean, it makes sense. I'm good with that.
I'm fine.
Well, should we have a motion on the budget and then amendments, or
Well, we're getting to the
that
motion.
works? As long as you're content.
Okay.
Bob, would you know what the millage would end up being on the fire tax?
Yeah, that's
I
what,
just had that
It's
conversation.
algebra,
just
that's
saying.
algebra, man.
I will probably have to,
If it's $5,000, it would be about.
well, we're talking about, see, two different taxes here.
Right.
Fire tax is a completely different tax.
I understand that, but
And
generally.
I don't even have I don't have the millage rate for the fire tax here with me, so.
0.48.
0.48.
It's,
It would set it right about 0.576. Give or take a couple of hundredths.
So we'd be more than halfway to 0.65.
Let's do 0.58 then. If we're gonna do it, like, I would rather be a 0.58 than 0.576, just.
well, that can be done. I mean, that makes sense, but I would have to run,
Yeah, I don't think we'll
Numbers
be
to
able to
make it
get,
exact.
I don't know if we can get the exact numbers for us right this second.
no, we can't.
But we need an exact rate to pass the tax ordinance advertisement so that
Well,
we can.
we can do 0.58 for the fire tax, that shouldn't be,
But
Do you wanna run up?
you
and do
need a
the
number
math
for the
quick?
budget.
yeah,
Do you wanna take a break till you get this?
that shouldn't be too much.
That'll help.
Well, if you wanna discuss the other matters in the budget a while, Bob can go up and calculate what that would do.
Is that too
So do you want a certain dollar amount, or do you want a 0.58?
0.58.
Let's make it 0.58.
I would propose 0.58 for fire tax, and then for general millage, with the changes we've suggested, Bob, and then add in 2,500 for EMS contribution. I don't know the net effect will actually be a lower millage rate for the general than what we had.
All right, so we want to add 2,500 to EMS. Okay, and a 0.58 millage fire tax rate. Now, for Parks and Rec, I have a minus 5,000, taking the street fair out.
And minus 5,000 for the maintained parks.
Okay, so minus 5,000 to the upgrades of the parks.
So I would guess we're looking at still an overall slight increase.
Well,
I mean, we could,
Only to the fire.
I mean, they could do it this way, I mean,
Not to the general.
whatever that 0.58 is,
this is now 20, right? 10 plus 10?
Okay.
plus 10, right, this is,
Last
right.
year, I didn't use any of the money. Very little of any of the rec board money was used last year.
And I
We try to self-sustain, but I need that cushion there, because if I come in to Bob and hand him a contract for New Year's Eve, I need to know, I mean, the small rec account has handled a lot of it,
But if, once we
right,
ordain
right.
to collect, we collect it. Whether we use it or not is another story, but we collect it.
This
So
will
we
get us
take it out
more in
from the
line with
pocket.
how it should be done, rather than just putting 1,500 like before.
Right.
Because we'll have the funds available,
Well,
if we get any
well,
back, it'll be.
The other thing that we could do that would help would be if sponsorship revenue then is recognized as revenue in the general fund.
And we're talking about.
If we
ads
kind of
and
work towards,
newsletter.
and I understand why the little Parks and Rec fund was set up, from what I'm told, because of the inconveniences of, and so forth. But I think we're now with the staff and the way we're operating in terms of getting checks cut and so forth, we probably could do away with having that second fund and run all Parks and Rec through the general fund, and then it would more
It makes it a
accurately,
lot
because
clearer.
like Roger's saying, he's not spending that much because he has the sponsorship money. It doesn't reflect in the budget because of the two different accounts. So I think if we did that, it would,
I agree.
it would help.
And regardless, even with the decreased proposed amounts, we're going from 800 in the special events and Winterfest to 9,300. So we're going up by $8,500, 1,000% increase. And in maintained parks, we're going from 5,700 to 10,000, so not quite a 100% increase. So it's still an increase. Still able to do
Still
some
gives
work
you more
and
cash.
address those two projects.
And my hope would be that if we could have a balance at the end of the year, we could look towards using funds to start getting ready for a street fair if we decide to have a street fair.
Or we could reimburse timber.
Yeah, or that too.
Yes.
Well, the other thing, if you want to limit any tax increase to just an increase in the fire tax, if you look at the change that Bob made, the suggestion I had for him, and that we changed in the snow removal wages, where we went from the 10 to adding another 10, and I had suggested that because last winter was a very mild winter, and keeping in mind what our expenses were with the blizzard 2 years ago. However, we could take 2,500 out of that would go to the EMS, and we would still be fine budgetarily, I think, and then you'd only have your fire tax increase if you wanted to,
Yeah,
limit the
it's-
tax increase.
It's very close to the way you guys have discussed it. All we'd really, if the rate is the rate, I mean, all I need to do is put the extra revenue in the line item for the contribution piece to equal the revenue, and that'll be it. So if council wants that rate, so you're saying you want a .00058 millage rate for the fire tax. Right now, it's I happen to have it, right now it's .00048. So you want to go,
I think that's our consensus.
right, so you want to go .00058, okay? Well, whatever that generates, will go into the contribution line to offset each other.
Right.
That's council's intention, right?
Yes.
Whatever's generated, you want that to go to the fire company. Well, the other adjustments you made are pretty much netted out. I mean, it's just $100 here or there. I can just make sure we have a balanced budget. So if the rate's 5.8, it can be that .00058 or 58 mils. Yeah,
Yes. And then on to the general.
well, that's up to council. That's up to what's been
discussed is.
Well, what's been discussed would eliminate a deficit.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily address council's desire to want to consider other things, you know what I mean? So that's obviously up to council. But we're pretty much balanced so far.
But then we would be at the same assessed millage as
Yes.
2017.
Yes, yeah.
Instead of going to 3.77, we'd be at 3.5 or whatever it is right now.
Well, the current rate is .00342.
Okay,
And that's how the budget was built,
right.
based on what the current rate is. There was some discussion about whether or not council wanted to consider a small incremental rate to keep up with inflation, which is
Well, we're doing an incremental rate on the fire side.
on the fire side.
That could maybe be back and forth, or something.
Alternating years, well, whatever. Again, that's
I mean, it
up to
sounds like
council.
we're gonna,
And I have
it sounds, hold on. It sounds like the new council will be implored to consider another .0007 mils for 2019 to get to the
I have a
.65.
suggestion too that you may want to look at, and Bob could really work these numbers, is that you could eventually take the workman's comp figure out of your general budget and put it under the fire tax also. So whatever the net amount you would pay for our workers' comp minus the reimbursement, I would suggest that you look at that in the future as adding that to the fire tax and getting your compensation that way and taking that out of your general.
It cleans it up and it puts it where it should be. I
Yes.
agree with you. My other question, you said workers' comp, where do we stand? Because that's some significant money likely owed to us by the municipalities.
Right.
Where do we stand in collecting the past years that weren't previously collected?
The current year we're fully collected. 2017 was collected. In 2018, Penn Township Board, I think it's Penn Township's board, is committed to pay the 2018 and the 2014.
They'll
Right.
have their budget at the next meeting.
So 15 and 16 are still forthcoming.
Yes, but then over the next, the
Right.
two subsequent years.
They'll do
Yeah,
15 and 16.
and as for Wheatfield, they were in the midst of budget discussions at the time I contacted their secretary. They are anticipating maybe paying the full balance over the course of 2018.
That's what they discussed.
Yeah, so.
Their budget's advertised.
But I didn't put the full amount.
I'll be honest, that's the main reason I don't think we need to have any more of an increase than this, is because we're gonna get those extra funds. I would like us to have some money to do some things that we couldn't do this year and in prior years. that would typically, you build into as an increase in the budget, but knowing that we'd be getting some of that money, I'm kind of looking at that and saying that's additional funds that could be used.
So you
No,
don't
that's
have,
part of the reason why there was a surplus, because we're looking at 2 years of worth of collections from both of those entities, and one of them could actually be more like 3 or 4 years over the course of the
what
whole
you've
year.
included here is 2
But all,
years.
it's 2 years, 2 years, that's it.
But we could get 4 years
We
from
could,
Wheatfield.
for Wheatfield.
Greg, may I ask Bob a question? What is the borough's outlay for workers' comp for the fire company minus the payback?
Well, I was just, I was gonna be able to, it's right around 20,000 total. And then whatever this,
Based on 2016's numbers, it looks like it'd be about 6,200.
Yeah, that's what I saw
Yeah.
on that.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I think we have a game plan. Are you comfortable with everything to
I am.
move forward? Okay.
I was clear, I always ask for clarification, because this is the place and the time for that.
Okay, so we have some proposed ordinances in front of us. One is the budget to advertise. And then subsequent to the budget, we would have a proposed tax ordinance.
So just so I'm clear, so we're looking at doing 3.77 mils for general budget and 0.56.
0.58 for fire and 3.42 for general.
Right, 0.5, okay. So that takes the total millage rate from 4.25 to 4.35.
No
increase in the.
No increase. I'm sorry, my understanding was only an increase to the millage rate of the fire tax.
Yes.
Correct.
The general real estate tax millage rate remains the same.
Same.
What was changing was some of the revenues and cuts in expenditures.
So that means that the anticipate, based on what we just discussed, the real estate tax rate for 2018 would have to be 3.48.
Oh, you mean in total? I don't know in total, because they're two separate rates.
3.42 and 0.58.
It's 3.42 mils for the general real estate tax,
Okay.
and 0.58 mils is what's proposed for the fire tax.
We have a budget before us with some discussed changes.
Motion, we advertise the presented budget as amended tonight.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Crowtharm, second by Mr. Adams to advertise the budget as proposed, in addition to the changes discussed this evening. Any further discussion? All those in favor give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Subsequent to that, we have ordinance number 409 of 2017, proposed ordinance number 409 of 2017, which would establish the tax rate on property. The corrections or changes to that we've discussed is item number 1. The 2018 real estate tax rate is 3.42 mils, which is the same as 2016 for general purposes, and 0.58 mils for fire protection purposes. The 0.58 is a 0.1 increase from 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Young, second by Mr. Crowthermel, to advertise ordinance number 409, 2017 for adoption, proposed ordinance number 409 for adoption at the December meeting with the discussed changes. Any further discussion?
Subject to the solicitor's review.
Yes.
Any further discussion? All those in favor give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Back to Ms. Young.
The next three ordinances, well, 2 ordinances and a resolution. Hold on. I'll put them in order of how they are, because it makes my brain work better. So, ordinance 410 of 2017, I'd like to move that we advertise that, setting the borough's sewer rate to $138 per quarter plus usage. The usage charge is $8 per thousand between I don't know, do we need all of that in the?
No, the usage
Advertise
charge
it as
is
is,
unchanged.
okay, so the usage hasn't changed.
So the quarterly rate increases from the current 123, so it increases by $15 per quarter.
Correct.
So $5 per month.
Correct,
And the usage surcharges are not changing.
correct. And that's subject to review and approval by the solicitor.
We have a motion.
So be it. Oh.
I'll second.
Roger B. Motion by Ms. Young, and second by Mr. Williams to advertise proposed ordinance number 410 of 2017, which would essentially increase the quarterly base rate by $15 for sewage. Any further discussion? All those in favor give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I'd like to make a motion that we advertise ordinance number 411 of 2017, setting the borough's water rate at $15 per month, subject to review and approval by the solicitor.
Why is it $15 a month and we're paying, what, $25 a month now?
Wasn't this something, there was something that the
There could be a
ordinance
typo.
wasn't changed?
It's
Could be a
definitely
typo. I
25
should
now.
double check that.
So if it's 25 now, then it would be going to 30.
Yeah,
That's not right.
I'm not sure how that happened.
But out of the borough, customers pay 20.
Well, wasn't,
So
again?
maybe
But
some.
there's nothing we can do about
There's
that.
nothing we can do about the water?
That's the PUC, that's all the
The-
PUC
I should know about
stuff.
the water, so.
The out of the borough
I just-
customers is a
Yep.
PUC
Okay.
tariff, and to explain just, if I may, to clarify, the finance committee, when they were looking at this, they wanted to avoid having a sudden increase when we finance all the projects that we have to do to improve the infrastructure. You know, the complaint that you hear most when you have a big increase is the size of the increase all at once, so they're looking to phase it in. As a result, they're looking to raise the water rate for borough customers only, $5 a month. We have some customers that are outside of the borough that won't be impacted by this. They are covered under a PUC tariff. The filing process to change that rate is lengthy. We don't even know everything involved in it because we've never done it. But we know that it will make most sense for the out of the borough customers to do a rate increase one time. So they will not see a phase in gradual, but rather after we complete the rate study that we're working to have done, then we will go to the PUC and file the rate increase tariff with the tariff to increase. So that is why, as Kathy pointed out, it will be, in this interim, the rate will be a little higher for the borough residents because you're going to benefit from the phasing in, whereas the out of the borough customers will see that increase all at once because of the PUC tariff.
So I'll amend my motion to $30 per month.
Well, I have a question. Is your second still good?
Yes.
Okay. Was this, are you confident that that was a typo, the 15 was a typo, or was this one of those where the ordinance set the base and then it was amended by resolution at some point?
That's what I was thinking.
I thought we cleaned all those up.
No, I'm pretty sure this is only set by ordinance. I don't recall anything about any resolution in this one. But, you know, I can look at it very quickly.
My current base rate's 25 a month.
So much.
I think I was thinking $15 a quarter and trying to get them all together, and just, it was a blur of a day, and I apologize, it doesn't make it easy.
I just want to make sure that if we're waiting, we're going through the process of advertising and public comment, adopting an ordinance, that we're doing the proper numbers.
Yep.
Because there's not a statement in here to repeal, there's not a repeal statement in here for something that would be.
Well, that's, Bill will put all that fancy language in. This was just to give you a framework so you had something to pass. That's why they review by the solicitor. But, in our ordinance, okay, I apologize, in our ordinance, so we have to, I have no idea how we're charging people $25, because our ordinance 219-17 says that our rate is, the monthly customer charge is $10. And I don't know, so that's why that was put in that way, because when I was taking the ordinance and just changing the number in it, so I couldn't tell you how it got changed. That is, water service charges is enumerated in our code, and there's not any indication of anything that
So
was
how
passed
could it
subsequent.
change how could the ordinance have, this is what they did with the sewer too, right?
I'm not sure. We had some issues with some ordinances being
Yes.
created that were changed then by resolution.
Correct.
Historically. I'm guessing that's what
Which I
happened here.
which I said is no change at all.
Right.
So,
Right. I'm not sure that's what happened here.
yeah, I
but,
have no idea.
You know, if there's a
Yeah.
document somewhere,
We have no new ordinance.
And this is just in our code this way. I was wondering if maybe there was like an ordinance done that never got in the,
Not that I have a record of, because all the new ordinances are updated in the new laws section of the website, so.
just curious.
I don't think there was ever even a resolution for the sewer change before. I think it would, I think if I recall from looking at the minutes, it was just a vote, so that may have been what they did with the water. I don't know.
It's entirely possible. Well, let's get it right.
We're gonna make
We'll do
it
our
legal.
ordinance. You want it at 30. New ordinance will be 30.
I don't want it 30.
I'm sorry.
So, okay. We have a motion by Ms. Young, second by Mr. Cropperhamel to advertise proposed ordinance number 411 with the change of under 219-17, the rate should be $30, not $50. And then, Bill, you'll have language in here in case there's something else that would add to that previously 10, now 30 is not valid.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Is
All
this,
those- I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, is this with review?
Yes, I'm sorry, with review by the solicitor, that was part of the motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor, do simply say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. Now this one is by resolution. This is, resolution 2017-7. That is a correction. For the general fee schedule to set the refuse collection fee. So this would be an increase of $3 in the base rate, to $21 per month for residential pickup.
No change in the dumpsters?
No, the dumpsters are increased based on $3 per month divided by 4.3 weeks in a month is how we came up with the figure, so that, because they're charged weekly. But it equates to the same $3 a month base charge.
Bill, is there any reason, did you make that as a motion?
I did.
Okay, we have a motion.
Subject to review by the solicitor.
Second. We have water and sewer both done by ordinance now,
Yes.
or to be done by ordinance. Trash is by resolution. Is
That's
there
correct.
any reason to not be that way?
No.
Okay.
That's what's authorized in your ordinances.
Okay. We have a motion by Ms. Young, second by Mr. Kirkhoff to advertise resolution. We don't need to advertise a resolution.
Correct.
Is your motion to adopt or to advertise?
Adopt.
Okay. Is your second?
I haven't reviewed.
You have it reviewed?
I haven't reviewed it. If you want it reviewed before you adopt it.
I
Oh.
don't think we need a,
It's a resolution. I don't care.
You're confusing me. I would say adopting it, and it is effective the first billing cycle of 2018. So the adoption is not immediate.
We have a motion by Ms. Young, a second by Mr. Kirkhoff to adopt resolution 2017-7 as proposed.
Yes.
Any further discussion?
I have a question. Some of the numbers that we got back from the refuse RFP, haven't been reviewed at this table yet, show a decrease in our costs for collection. How is that going to affect this rate?
We don't know yet.
my preliminary review is that this rate will be sufficient regardless of whether we, it will work for either way, if we keep the service ourselves or if we outsource the service.
Okay.
But that is why it's not at the table tonight, because we've asked Bob to do a more thorough review, because he's our numbers guy, and while he provided me the numbers that I did my analysis based on, I want him to go back and double check it all. And with everything with 2016 and budget and everything else, he just didn't have time to get that completed. And so we are gonna have those numbers and revisit that at the Finance Committee next month, with an eye for the Finance Committee to decide if they want to make a recommendation then to council to go any further.
If this is something that we can change by resolution, wouldn't it be wise to just hold off on it until we have those more solid numbers?
We would need
for the
this either
cost?
way. Based on, it would work out either way. We have a deficit in our refuse fund currently, and this will eliminate that. If the decision is made to outsource, it does not look like, there'll be a reduction in our expenses, and there's other associated benefits. For example, workers' comp, because we have less dangerous activities, may go down, we don't know that for sure. Concerns about the environmental regulations with garbage and all that. There's a lot of other factors. But as far as the finances are concerned, based on, Bob may find some differences, but I don't think, do you think there's anything significant that we missed?
I don't think there's anything material.
So it should not make any impact on the rate either way.
We have a motion by Ms. Young, second by Mr. Kirkhoff to adopt resolution 2017-7. Any further discussion? I'd like to do a roll call.
Okay. Find my roll call.
Actually, don't want anything else. Council will be able to, in January, because of reorganization year, you can reopen the budget if the numbers should turn out to be significantly different. But without the resolution, we don't have the revenue to back the budget, the balanced budget that we're passing with the refuse fund, so this establishes that revenue.
Okay. Ready?
Yes.
Mr. Crothermouth,
No.
Mr. Epley,
Yes.
Mr. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Kirkhoff,
Yes.
Ms. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Nace.
No.
Passes 5-2.
Very good. Next, you have 2017 recycling payment for the Boy Scouts.
Yeah, I'd like to release that.
Is that a motion?
Yes, it is a motion.
What's that amount?
Well, what's the amount? Yeah, I think 2,500.
It's either 2,000 or 2,500.
I'm sorry.
Boy
pardon?
Scouts.
2,500.
Is it 2,500?
You guys are confusing me. It's 2,500.
We have a motion by Ms. Young, a second by Mr. Kirkhoff to release $2,500 of the 2017 recycling contribution to the Duncannon Boy Scout troop. Any further discussion? All those in favor give consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
This evening, we received the Nature Conservancy information, the most up-to-date stuff. This isn't new. I will give the floor to you if there's, well, between you and Bill, the changes that were put in place and the updates and all of that.
Sure, well, thank you, Christie, and thank you, Borough Council, for the opportunity to be here. I do also want to introduce Dr. Ben Jones with the Pennsylvania Game Commission. He was kind enough to come in as a partner of the Nature Conservancies tonight again. And yeah, so I just, I'm struck as I'm sitting here and listening to talk about infrastructure and about the long term and putting money in to make it better. I just want to say that theme and the Nature Conservancy, we're not engineers and we don't manage public works, but we are land managers. So we're here and we manage millions of acres across the United States. We've been around, I'm getting to kind of our credibility. We've been around since 1951, which prior to the borough owning the watershed, it was the Trout Run Water Company, and prior to that, it was owned by Duncannon Iron Works. So we've been around a long time, and you've owned the watershed a long time. And we're here,
you know, to be a partner to help you manage the watershed in a way that, much like the Chestnut Street water main improvement project, we want your forest to be strong and productive, producing income in a steady and consistent way, and also these other values, recreation, driving more people to the area, which then lifts the tax base, and yeah, I can go on and on, no pine about that. So I just want to say, since I've been here for about the last year, you know, the Nature Conservancy presented a proposal to purchase a conservation easement to prepare a forest management plan, and essentially to be a conservation partner with the borough. The original option was a 3-year option for the Nature Conservancy to raise all the money we needed basically to purchase the easement. One of the things over the course of the last 3 months I've heard, and I think it's a very, it's a fair concern, is 3 years is a long time to get a $100,000 option and then wait for us to raise all the funds to come to the table for the conservation easement. So over the course of the last month, I've been working with my leadership and our fundraisers to basically structure the project in 3 phases. So I'm hoping that consistent cash flow will be a positive to this. So still there's a $100,000 option, of which, and Bill can talk about, Bill reviewed, that would basically grant the Nature Conservancy the right to purchase a conservation easement in 3 phases. The option, instead of being a 3-year option, would only be a 1-year option. So we have 1 year to perform through 12/31/2018. If we don't perform what's in that option, the $100,000 deposit would be the borough's, and you could go about your business. You know, and life would go on. So the way we structured it is 3 pieces. We would start, and there should be a map somewhere in there. We would start in the west, so we'd start out by Pine Road, and we'd work east. And we do $200,000 payment by the end of next year, of December 31, 2018, which would be roughly 560 or 500. I don't have it in front of me. Over 500 acres.
573.
573. Thank you. And then at the end of December 31st, or before the end of December 31st, 2019, we would pay another $175,000 to the borough, so consistent cash flow, to purchase the set, basically the middle.
510.
Thank you. And the other one should be 510 because they're equal. It's
There you go.
$175,000. So, and that last, and then that would be by 12/31/2020. And all of those in the option have a provision on or before. And I will say, the Nature Conservancy, by changing our proposal to this, we have a DCNR grant pending that you know authorize us through a resolution to submit, and we're committed to seeing this project go through. I mean, we're just committed. I'll just leave it at that, to see this project completed. And you know that being said, you know, Ben Jones here as well, because one of the other themes I heard when we were here, and actually I think Ben was here beside me, and particularly when Frank brought this up about you don't want to have to be compelled. You don't want to be able to not practice sustainable forestry and be tied into spending all kinds of money on the watershed for things. And I heard that loud and clear. Obviously, I'm not going to speak for Bill. He's going to give you his assessment. But I really tried in good faith to put that throughout the conservation easement. The easement has whereas clauses talking about your consistent, the property is part of your financial health, and it's a working forest. So these things are built into there, part of the document. Also, you know, Josh is here in front of you today, but what if, you know, 10 years from now it's not Josh, and somebody else, you say, no, this is the spirit of the agreement, and somebody else comes in and says, well, no, it's not. There's provisions in the conservation easement that provide that the Nature Conservancy won't unreasonably withhold approval. So we define the spirit of our relationship, and it's really what I've been talking to you about from the beginning. I'm not trying to come in here. This is not a bait and switch. This is an honest sell. and I'm committed, I'm a local resident, been, since 1979, started on Roseland Road, just in Wheatfield Township, but my mom manages curves for not curves anymore, I'm all about you fitness, I'm sorry, on Market Street, and I just love it here, and I want to be a help to the borough and to the local area. So that being said, I'm happy to answer any questions. Ben's here because there are some opportunities for the game commission for invasives and things, maybe even next year. You can.
Yeah, as we talked about in July, it was.
No cost to the borough.
Yeah, it was apparent that was a concern.
Right.
Of a lot of people, the invasives issue. You also mentioned in your commentary earlier. And we partner with the Nature Conservancy on millions of acres across the state because they actively manage forests. These easements aren't a slam the door and then these forests are left about their own devices. Managed forests are resilient forests, and that's why we partner so much with the Nature Conservancy. So, as I mentioned back in July, we do have a federal grant right now that's available to do this kind of forest management and habitat work on our hunter access cooperative properties, of which you all have been a part, as near as I can tell, for at least a decade, but potentially longer than that. So you're already written into our hunter access agreement as a cooperator. That makes you eligible for these funds to do a lot of this work. Zero cost to you, it's 100% covered by the Game Commission through this federal grant. Those funds run until September of 2018, so with sealing the deal with the Nature Conservancy, we can start working on a forest management plan and get some of that on the ground here as early as March and really start moving forward. The only change for our hunter access agreement would be that at the point where we're going to expend funds on the property, we do ask you to sign into a longer term 10-year hunter access agreement, just so that we're sure that our investment is going to be seen at least 10 years out. But we can cross that bridge, certainly.
Yes, so thanks, Ben. Any questions? I'm here. I'm available.
Bill, your review.
Yes.
Give us the skinny what you
Okay.
think.
Hold on 1 second. Frank, I have a question.
Go ahead, Frank.
Yes, sir.
Can this easement, once the Nature Conservancy has it, can it be transferred or sold to some other government agency?
It can be transferred, yes, to basically to anyone that meets the requirements of.
Right, it meets the nonprofit requirements, but to my knowledge, I've never seen an easement sold. The easements we hold are we're agreeing to basically go and look at the property and help you in perpetuity, so it's really a liability. You're conveying development rights through the easement. You're saying you're part of the bundle of rights to the property are being restricted through a conservation easement, but there's nothing that the Nature Conservancy holds in that easement. At least I've never found anyone that wanted to buy anything in there. I've never seen a market for selling somebody an agreement that basically says you can't develop a property. There's this. You control the public access, you control the access, you own the timber. That's the thing about an easement versus like a fee purchase is we have a very narrow interest that we've never sold easements.
This is a significant point, and one why we have to be careful about what the documents say and what they do. Okay, because as much as we like the Nature Conservatory and how they're working with us, and Josh and their friends, that I can't guarantee you're going to be dealing with them. Okay, so we really have to look to the terms of the agreements themselves and the easements themselves. Okay, that's an important point.
If you're going to go in partners with somebody, you should really do a background check. And my first problem was when their forester came in here and tried to throw our forester under the bus in political terms. I said he just trashed his reputation. So I went back, and a lot of people told me, they said, you got to investigate these people, and I kept putting it off, and they said, look, you got to look into this. So I got on the computer, and here's what I found out. This is from www.discoverthenetwork.org, And I'm gonna read some high points, and I have everything here to pass out to everybody, so you can see if I'm reading anything out of context. Nature Conservancy is the largest and wealthiest environmental group in the U.S. It purchases private lands and resells them to government at inflated profit in the name of conservation. And here's an example. TNC purchases private lands and thereafter either maintains ownership of the property or sells it, usually at greatly inflated rates to the federal government or state government. Further
Can you hold on
down.
1 second? Is your company based out of Arlington, Virginia?
We are a state, Pennsylvania state chapter. The Nature Conservancy's main headquarters is out of Arlington.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can't refute any of these things at a, off a website I've never heard of.
Well, some of this came out, Washington Post did an investigation, and then several people picked it up, and I've got all the information I'll pass out to you. I printed it off. But I just want people to know what we might be dealing with.
Well, and that's the property, not the easement. We're not selling the property to them, we're selling
I'm
the,
saying if the easement can be sold, we have somebody else overlooking us at that point.
we still own the property.
Right, but you're dealing now with TNC, so let me continue on to tell you what happened here. Typical was TNC's approach to 14,200 acres of swampland in Georgia. After acquiring the land, valued around $7 million in 2002, TNC proceeded to sell it to the state of Georgia for $20 million. This modus operandi has promoted TNC to dub itself, quote, nature's real estate agent, end quote. Its ultimate objective is to decrease private property ownership and maximize the nationalization of property. On further down in this piece, in November 2004, TNC joined forces with the Sierra Club to oppose an Oregon ballot measure which would have provided compensation to property owners whose land was devalued by regulations prohibiting development, regulations endorsed by TNC. Now, there was a link there to the Sierra Club, and I did that. And I can tell you right now, you aren't going to see much clean and green from the Sierra Club. They accepted $101 million from a hedge fund manager, and he said, to get this donation, you are going to adopt my political agenda, and I won't say what his political agenda is, but I have information in there if you want to read it.
Before you go any further, can you distribute your information so we can follow along?
The tagline for this organization is a guide to the political left.
I know. It's the only website out there that comes up. It's a smear website.
Well, why don't we distribute it, and we'll take a 10-minute break.
Yes.
Everyone can read for a little bit.
Before we break, can I just ask, there's a lot of talk selling.
Never sold a conservation
What would you
easement.
gain monetarily if you sold it?
Zero. We have transferred easements in the past to conservation partners. This is all fact, not fiction. We actually have to pay our partners to hold the easements because the partner is taking on rights and obligations, i.e., if you say you're not going to develop the property, you have to go out every year and pay somebody, a staff member, to go out and make sure and go to the landowner not to develop the property.
Right.
So a conservation easement is more of a liability to the holder than an asset. I have a conservation easement on my own personal property with the Central Pennsylvania Conservancy, which we partner with, and they asked me for money for stewardship when I donated it, because it's a liability. They have to come out every year. It really isn't a commoditizable asset.
Did we want Bill to give his feedback before we break?
Well, I don't want to interrupt Frank. Frank started, I want to let him.
Oh, okay, I thought we were going to break. I apologize.
So why don't we, since we've distributed some information, why don't we take a 10-minute break until 9:30? Give everybody a chance to read what Frank's presented. We'll come back and let Frank finish what he wants to say. We'll let Bill provide his comment, and then we'll decide where we go from there.
I have more copies up here.
Mr. Eckler.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I know most people are aware that I'm not a fan of long drawn out council meetings, but I'm gonna make an exception tonight and continue on. Next paragraph on that same sheet I was reading from, which was Nature Conservancy, stubbornnetwork.org. In the summer of 2003, and the reason I'm reading these is to highlight some of the things that have went on in the TNC. In the summer of 2003, the Washington Post ran a series of investigative articles spotlighting one particular TNC fundraising program. Under the program, explains the Post, the charity buys raw land, attaches some development restrictions, and then buyers give the Conservancy cash payments for roughly the amount of the discount, a sum that is then written off the buyer's income taxes. In one of the several cases detailed by the Post, TNC helped a trustee purchase a 146-acre parcel of land in Kentucky for the purpose of building a horse farm and 2 houses. TNC acquired the property valued at $368,000 under a conservation easement prohibiting industrial development, and then resold the land to the trustee for $252,000, who then made up the remaining costs in a charitable donation to TNC, a $130,000 tax deduction. In response to the revelations, the IRS conducted an exhaustive audit of TNC in 2004 and ruled to disallow inappropriate tax-deductible donations to charitable organizations in exchange for real estate. Further down in that article, the paper also reported that TNC had extended a $1.55 million home loan to its president, Steve McCormick, at a discounted interest rate, which it misreported. McCormick later repaid the loan in full following the disclosure. Continuing on. Perhaps most damaging for TNC's reputation, the Post reported that the organization, even as it professed a commitment to saving the last great places on Earth, had drilled for oil and natural gas on a wildlife preserve in Texas City, Texas, a breeding ground for an endangered species of grouse. TNC had been awarded the land from the Mobil Oil Company with the understanding that it would safeguard the property. Following the embarrassing disclosure, TNC hastily announced its suspension of what it called resource extraction activities. The last paragraph in this article, this one right here, says, one notable scandal the Nature Conservancy raised millions from well-intentioned donors to buy land to help protect a threatened species, the Atwater's prairie chicken. If you've never seen an Atwater's prairie chicken, it's a very beautiful bird from extinction. But after the purchase and approved oil drilling there, the endangered birds are no longer on the land, but the group continues to grow rich off of oil profits. After a 2-year Senate investigation and exposure by the Los Angeles Times, the Nature Conservancy promised to cease new drilling on its lands, but it apparently decided it lacks cash more than endangered species and expanded fossil fuel extraction on the land despite its promise. And I have another article here I would like to read from. These are just randomly picked up. You can go into the computer and just key in and you'll come up with all kinds of articles. I'm not even going to talk about this one, but some parts of this are going to come up in this next article here about them trying to take over aged people have big branches, and they go in and try to take them over, and I'll just give you a little blurb about it here. Revelations that land trust groups such as the Nature Conservancy had made profits off of government land deals led to an investigation by the U.S. Department of Interior's Inspector General in 1992. The investigation found that the department had spent $7.1 million more than necessary on the 64 lands between 1986 and 1991. There have been other government reports critical of Nature Conservancy land deals as well. In 1991, the Missouri State Auditor found that the state paid $500,000 more than necessary on 6 land purchases for the Conservancy. According to a June 1994 Newhouse News Service report, the auditor claimed there was a conspiracy to jack up the sales price of those tracts to help the organization regain $400,000 in losses claimed on 2 state park deals that went sour. This was a violation of state financial regulations. Continuing on in that article, the Conservancy has ways of tapping into taxpayer funds as well, and for purposes that have nothing to do with land acquisition. In 1993, for example, the group received $44,100 grant from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration for a Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary outreach program. This outreach included developing and directing a plan to counter opposition's push for countywide referendum against the establishment of the sanctuary and recruiting local residents to speak out against the referendum at 2 Board of County meetings hearings. In other words, the Conservancy used taxpayer dollars to lobby. So much for the group's moderate reputation. But government land deals and grants aren't the only controversy surrounding the Nature Conservancy. The group has frequently been accused of using intimidation tactics to force private landowners to sell their land. In one of the most flagrant cases of intimidation, a state director for the Conservancy threatened to have the government condemn a landowner's property if he refused to sell it for annexation to the Cypress Creek National Wildlife Refuge. This is a quote: "If your land is not acquired through voluntary negotiation, we will recommend its acquisition through condemnation," wrote the Conservancy's Albert Pyatt in 1963 to the landowner.
93.
And I have another paragraph down here. Despite its much vaunted concern for preserving its environment, the Nature Conservancy nevertheless accepts contributions from such environmentally harmful businesses as oil companies. The group is not particularly a friend of America's most disadvantaged Americans, minorities. In 1990, it teamed up with the National Audubon Society to oppose a sheep grazing program by poor Chicanos in New Mexico, even though the grazing was essential for an economic development project. And the last thing I have is selective Nature Conservancy quotes. A Nature Conservancy official explaining how the Conservancy helps government agencies circumvent democracy. We do, this is in quotes, "we do work closely with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We buy these properties when they need to be bought, so at some point we can become the willing seller to government. This helps the government get around the problem of local opposition." And that was by the Nature Conservancy's William Weeks, quoted by syndicated columnist William T. Brooks. And one item I'm not even going to read from. You all have a copy if you pick one up. Ron Arnold and the Nature Conservancy embroiled in another land grab scandal. I'm not particularly a fan of having the Nature Conservancy take over our lands and basically tell us how to run it. And I think you ought to give this some real consideration. You can do your own research and see what you come up with. We've had that property for years. When the money is all spent, if we get to the Conservancy, if the council goes through with this, and the money's all gone, you've still got somebody overlooking it.
But not owning it.
Not owning it, but telling us basically how we're going to farm the forest and so forth.
Every article that you brought here talked about how they bought the land and sold it off to other places. They're not offering to buy our land, they're offering...
I understand that, but
Okay.
when you see tactics like this, you wonder what is going to come under the table. I don't care how good or how tight the easement's written. If they decide to sell that easement to the state government or the national government, we have somebody else looking over our property.
Further,
That's my whole concern.
So, well, my question is, didn't you say that we'd still be able to do things like timber cuts and stuff?
That was what Bill was, I don't want to speak for Bill, but that's where the agreement, it's essential to have the right terms in your agreement, because the agreement lives. It persists on in perpetuity. Organizations might not. The agreement lives in perpetuity.
Yeah, let me start with the, Mr. Epley, if I could just give you, I started with the proposition that I'm assuming that these guys are crooks.
Very good.
Okay, and I think that Josh will will recognize that in some of my dealings, because there was one particular proposal that I just kicked back and said, I ain't doing this, okay? And so, that's my job, to make sure that what is enforceable in law, okay, is something that is proper and appropriate and isn't subject to the whims of some green wacko weenies, I don't know, You understand what I'm saying? Okay, and that's why we work this document over to a fairly well, to try to define and delineate rights and privileges under it. The proposal, and we've gotten the actual conservation easement, and is pretty good. Okay, now it is true that the nature conservator can assign their rights, but it's limited to whom? Okay, there has to be a qualified holder under the Conservation and Preservation and Easement Act.
It's another interest.
Yeah, and it is also true that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has some interests because they're providing a fair amount of the money. But my point is, it doesn't really matter who owns the easement, okay? Because they will be bound by the terms of the easement, just like Josh's group. So whoever holds it, the only rights which and obligations which can be enforced in a court of law will be those that are in the document itself. Now, what the document does, it prohibits you from using your land in some manner. You can't develop it, and you can't. Thank goodness you're not allowed to do electrical generation. I mean, that was the smartest thing in the whole agreement. You can't do mineral extraction or fracking or it's a conservation easement. It's intended to limit it. Your use of it to produce water for your community is highly protected. It has a 30-acre area, which is basically taken out of the restrictions of the easement itself, and allows for some development, as natural growth of that. So I'm really contented with that. Has some requirements. You have to have it available for passive public recreational uses, hunting, hiking, bird watching, these sorts of things. That's good. I don't see a particular problem with that, although I think you've closed the area to hunting at sometimes, I believe.
The road, not the...
Just the road, okay. That's fine. The only thing, and I've talked with Josh about this, that I just have a little bit of concern about, and this is after making them pay for anything that is going to cost money, okay, that has to be done. Because one of my marching orders directly from you, Mr. Apley, was make sure this isn't going to cost us money, right? I remember you telling me that, and I took it to heart. So there's a lot of little things, title search, and some other things going on in there, developing plans and so forth. The only thing that I have a little bit of unease about, because, again, it isn't nailed down, is after the easement goes into effect, the easement holder, Josh's group, is going to pay for and develop a forest management plan. Okay? Now, I don't know what that's going to say, right? Because, one of my suggestions is, why don't you do it first? They can't do that. So, okay. So, I don't know what it's going to say. And my concern is that it's going to say, you got a lot of invasive species, it's not growing up well. To manage this forest, it should be sprayed, it should be cut, it should be, all the things that the gentleman from the Game Commission was discussing, and well, we're not going to do that because that all costs money. We don't have the money to spend. Okay, now they can't make us do it. Okay, the way this is written, I made sure that was the case. But keep in mind that you're timbering they have to approve it, and they have to approve it, the approving or disapproving would be that it isn't in keeping with your forest management plan. Okay, we want to timber, they're gonna say, this is what my concern is. They're gonna say, well, this isn't in keeping with your forest management plan because you haven't sprayed and cut and, all this kind of stuff. So that's entirely possible. Okay, now we've included in there standards to judge by.
Third party.
And, so it isn't just at the discretion or the whim. Okay, there are standards that can be argued about. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
But basically, if we didn't follow their management plan,
Mhm.
they could come back and say, no, you can't timber, because you didn't follow our plan.
That's possible. That's correct.
Will there be anything to timber?
And I did provide.
Yeah, but we put
samples.
standards in there.
And we put standards in. The other thing, so Bill, was, I understand you can't do it for the property now because it's expensive. You haven't even signed the option yet. But you've got 56,000 other acres enrolled in your program. Doing what you said you're gonna do here. Not selling, basically show me that you're not just selling us on something here and you're gonna do a switcheroo. And I did provide plans.
Right.
And they're for other water providers, Lockheed and Bethlehem. We have Evans Creek coming online. We've got Capital Region Water, which is going to do like 15 harvests in the next 10 years. It's
And there are objective standards.
Yes.
Okay, we can argue about it. And we had them included in language, which shall not unreasonably be withheld
Right.
permission, that sort of thing, which then puts it in the realm of we can argue about it. It's presumably a court case.
Right.
But, so we did what we could there. My point there is you cannot count on producing the income from timbering that you do now, okay? You just can't count on it being at the same level, because it's just, you're gonna have to manage your properties, and you should manage your properties. I'm not arguing that it's a bad idea. This is just coming from, we don't have the money. That's going to intrude upon you maximizing income from a timbering, okay? Because part of the timbering, so we're going to do timbering, well, part of the timbering is probably going to be some species that are less desirable and, this sort of thing, to get them out of the way. And that's my only concern with the conservation easement itself. Now, we've worked over the option, and that's kind of been a bit of an issue here, and Josh has worked very hard. And the latest option, just came in this afternoon, and I have reviewed it, and I'm fairly contented with it. It needs some tweaking in that the option's fine, but now the easement itself has to be split up into 3 separate easements. Okay, so if they pay the first $200,000, they get this easement.
Yeah.
And then you pay the next one, you get this easement. And right now it's written as one big easement, which won't work. But that's lawyer stuff. We can figure that out. I'm sure that that's not a problem. And it's just a kind of an artifact of changing the option itself. Keep in mind, the option is to be exercised within 1 year. Okay, you're getting $100,000 for that year. If they decide to say no, and that could happen under this, they're not tied into it. You keep the $100,000 and you can do whatever you want to. If they exercise the option, then presumably they would pay that first $200,000. We would transfer it, and then we'd go to the next year, and they. Now, the other thing about that is, if they default, and I'm not sure that's the correct term.
No, not.
Yeah, I'm sure it's, but if they say, we don't want to buy the next 2, there's really no remedy. You can't make them, and there's no penalty. You can't say, well, we lost, $100,000 worth of timber sales, but so, and that's written into the agreement, and in a sense, it is not a problem because you've gotten the 100,000, that takes you up to that first year. If they say, no, we're not gonna do it, well, okay, you haven't lost anything. So but if they do buy, you have that 200,000, okay, and then, a year later, they say no, okay, then you can do a timber sale, okay? So it isn't really in the sense of a real estate contract, I enter into a contract with Roger to buy, and he agrees to sell, and if somebody backs out, I can sue him, or, either for, that's not in there, you need to know that, but I don't think it's a problem, and I think it's probably appropriate in this situation. And the whole idea of this tiered structure of sales is to try to move money sooner into the borough's hands. It is something that is trying to accommodate us, okay? Instead of saying, well, 3 years from now, maybe. And the question is, we're losing 2 years of timber sales there. We're only getting $100,000, So this is to try to shorten those periods up, and actually the option period is just that 1 year. They can exercise.
At what point would the forest management plan be developed?
Well,
And would it be in 3 tiers as
no,
with
we
the
would develop
purchase?
one forest management plan for the property. And we would, so there's some, the tiered easement is really designed, as Bill said, to get cash, to move things along, so you don't have this 3-year wait period where you're like, I don't know, what they might or they might not, and we have to hold everything off for 3 years. So, there's certain things, to get out there and do some of this invasive control, we might want to start with an inventory sooner than later, even once the option's signed, and even before the first easement's closed, just to be opportunistic with some things.
Funding's there to help cover some of
Yeah,
those
so,
expenses.
and that's where the Nature Conservancy, we can be flexible that way. And I think, to Bill's point about, you're not going, I would absolutely 100% agree, you're not going to maximize for today, but I akin it to if you're a farmer, it would be like farming your fields and not paying any attention to what the future harvest is going to look like. I just think, just given the area we live in here, they've been cuts, and, if I had that, personally, if I had that type of an asset, I would want to know, how many trees do I have? What condition are they in? What's my harvest schedule look like over the next 20, maybe 40-year outlook? So you can start to think about long-term capital, projects, and other things.
And those objective standards are protecting your interest. You don't have any professional foresters on the board, so those objective standards are set to make sure that you're protecting your interest as sustainable into the long term, as opposed to someone that could be coming in working on a commission, and it's just their word. Setting that higher level of those objective standards, I think, is an important part of protecting your interests.
And the actual management plan will be the Nature Conservancy working to prepare it, but the top line of all of that will come from you all. What are your number one goals on the property? That comes from you. That is not from the Nature Conservancy. And we'll put that into the standards.
My main concern is still years down the road, Nature Conservancy says, we're going to transfer this to the state government, transfer it to federal government. I don't like that idea at all.
Well, what would happen in that situation? We would still have this to fall back on, right?
The agreement would be the agreement, right?
State government, federal government can lean a lot heavier on us to do something that they want done.
Within the terms of that agreement.
Within the terms of the agreement.
Well, you gonna fight that in court if they wanna change it? How much money do we have to go to court to fight the state government or federal government? That's what I'm looking at down the road. I don't care how tight the agreement's written. Somebody says, well, we're gonna go to court, we're gonna have a court decide that, whether we can do it.
We've been going so far as to put in the agreement that jurisdiction is Perry County, or the federal, but,
So
we
with
tried
the
to keep it
forest-
as local as possible.
With the forest management plan, would it be created sometime in 2018? I guess here's my question, and so we're going to be going into a 3-tiered piece. They have the option not to go into year 2.
Yes.
Do we have the option not go into
No.
year 2?
No, they pay
It's
us.
only their option.
They pay us their
Okay.
title to it.
Right.
So we're gonna know what the forest management plan is gonna look like whenever they're developing it and presenting
Yeah,
it.
yeah, you're gonna get the forest management plan on the whole property. We're not gonna do it in tiers. So the reason why we'll do that is we'll have an assurance, we have an option, and we have every, that's why I'm sitting here, we have every intention to execute to go the whole way through the process.
Does it say that in the plan?
It
That they're
can.
gonna do the property management in one whole thing versus 3 pieces?
It calls for it to be done all at once, I
In
believe.
12 months,
Yeah.
in 12 months, and we can put that in the first easement.
Yeah.
So, yes, it is.
So, the bulk of the money, not the option, the other money, is coming through in the form of a grant, correct? Or that's the hope, you get the
Yeah.
grant. So what if you don't get the grant? Then you're just responsible for raising these funds?
Calling friends and
Okay.
and others, and honestly, that's why I said I'm
That's
100%
what I assumed,
committed.
you and me had talked a little
Yeah,
bit
I'm
about that.
100% committed.
Okay.
I will do that. I will call, I will hold fundraisers, I will, wash cars till the cows come home.
So if they call in a couple weeks and say, hey, you guys got the grant,
Yeah,
would you just pay all of it up right away?
absolutely, year one, done.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
so
the
then it
way
would just be
it's
done.
Done.
That's the way that it's written.
All 3 are, in the option, it's all of them read Warner before, so
Warner before.
in essence, we could close them all Warner before.
They wouldn't be
I
required
just
to.
wanted to make
It's not
sure.
required, but I would do it if I
Right.
had the funds.
They wouldn't be
Okay.
required to, but that's their intention.
There's an-
That's what, I knew what it was saying, I wanted to see what his
Yes,
intent was, and I thought he
absolutely.
said it. So, the parcel, what do you call the 3 different sects of land? The 3 tracts.
Oh, the tracks, yeah, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3.
Phase 1 is the only one that actually, like, right now has, like, timber available to cut. Is there a reason that that's phase 1, or?
I just went from the west to the east because of your
Okay.
water footprint.
Okay.
You can make phase 1 whatever you want. I don't really have a,
I only said, yeah,
I didn't
that's,
know how to phrase that question, but I wondered the same thing.
like, that's what I wanted to see, because if you're fine with, just because
Make
that's the
phase-
one we
make-
know where we have the timber that's most valuable to us.
make phase 1 the middle one. I really don't
Okay.
care. I mean, honestly, that wasn't the.
I would
intention.
become more, that to me is more appealing to,
Yeah, that was one of the kind of practical questions of the phasing. There are 2 aspects. One are, so they get phase 1, and it's the important one, and they say, well, we don't really need phase 2 and 3.
I
so
was looking at this
go away.
essentially, if they took phase 1,
No,
that we would essentially be locked out anyways with the other 2 phases, because we know that they're more timbered, so
yeah.
by taking only one, you
Give
would
me your
essentially.
poor, give me your weak. Or what is that? No, it's not this project. Yeah, so,
Muddled masses.
so yeah, go ahead. In fact, if you want that to be an amendment to the proposal, just make that amendment. That's fine.
I personally thought that would be, for our best interest to have that be changed.
I just went from west to east. It was really that honest.
So you just change phase 3 to phase 1?
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah, that's, the,
Does it matter that it's a bigger dollar amount with 63 extra acres, or that wasn't a consideration?
No, we can just, I could just bump the acreage up a little more. If you still want the 200K in year 1, I could bump the acreage up
Oh,
a
yeah.
little more on, yeah, unless you want to switch this.
I
No,
think that would be
yeah.
best.
So I can just
We
switch
want
the
our
acreage.
cake and eat.
Right, so I can switch the acreage to that phase and move it out, line out a little bit, and then phase 2, phase 3. So
So,
phase 3 would be the far west track, is what you're saying. That's fine.
okay,
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna pretend we get all the money up front then.
Okay, me
So,
too. Me too.
Let's just pretend we got it all.
Yes.
We're gonna earmark that to do whatever we're gonna do. Let's just pretend we're gonna spend it on sewer improvements. Fine. We don't need to do that, let's pretend we're spending it on that.
If the council's gonna go through with this, I suggest you get all the money at one time on the barrelhead. All 3 phases are paid off and you get all your cash at once.
At the
I-
end,
I
sure.
would hope,
No, at the start,
How?
because they're promising to pay this much, and then they're gonna pay this much, and then this much, say, I want the whole thing right now.
The original offer was the whole thing at once, but because of concerns about waiting 3 years, they modified it so that we would get the cash flow sooner. So that's the reason it's
They're
structured that way. They were looking
accommodating us.
for us, not.
And they're not getting the easement till they pay for it.
Right.
This isn't, we're not loaning the money here. Okay, we're not transferring the easements and then saying, we're gonna take your promise that you're gonna pay us a year or into 2 years and 3. And that, that was kind of the proposal we were looking at earlier, and I said, no, I couldn't live with that. I threw a lawyer's fit, I think.
I wish I'd have seen
So,
that.
yeah.
It was good, I was there for that one.
So that's why it's broken down in chunks. When they pay us for this chunk, they'll get this chunk. Then they pay us for the next chunk, but if they don't pay us, they don't get it. The question is, would having an easement over a third of our property create a problem for the other two-thirds rather?
It would if they gave it.
I think it would if if it was parcel 3 first,
Okay.
but not if it's parcel 1 first.
If they gave away parcel 2 and they split it up, that would be a problem.
There's-
And you split the property.
You still own the property.
Yeah, we-
Right, but you split the easement.
The easement,
It's not, yeah.
When I look at it, I only saw that as an issue with, depending on the parcel, we already had that.
That makes sense.
But what I was gonna ask is, so we get the money and we spend it, so we don't have that money, and you're doing your plan, on what we need to do to sustain the forest. So it comes back that you have to spray for this, cut this back. What's it cost, like, what do you think that costs? Are we talking like hundreds of thousands probably? Cause I'm looking at it as like, if we're gonna take this money, we should earmark and say,
It's for the improvements that.
well, at least part of it, like, I'd hope that it's not all,
Some
but
stewardship of the forest.
if you're gonna give us,
Right.
if we're gonna get $650,000,
Right.
and you're gonna tell me right now, it's probably gonna cost you 200, I'm gonna look at it and say, that 200 should come right up front, let's set it aside, let's get this,
Well-
let's make ourselves
And I don't
do this.
disagree with you,
It's hard
but
for-
are we doing that now?
But it's hard for me.
It doesn't matter, it doesn't
We're,
matter.
we're so concerned about the forest, what have we done so far? We've got a guy paid on commission that comes in here with a handwritten map, and it's the gospel against every other third party that's come in here that's not at all connected, and it's a conspiracy theory.
But we're letting it
Okay,
go
I won't speak
in
to that, I'm
nature.
trying, I feel like I'm trying to get to
No, so what I guess I think your philosophy on that, if that is council's philosophy, that's great, but for me, it's hard to sit here and give you any sense of figures. I mean, usually the number one thing you can do is have it enrolled, and I would suggest you get DMAP tags for doe, because the number one thing that exacerbates, invasives and all kinds of other stuff is you have real high, the higher the ear density, the harder it is on your forest and your good regeneration. You want to get back to, they like oak, they like all the desired species you want to regenerate. And the other thing is, we'll have to just see, once you're FSC certified, some of the things I'm hopeful, because we're just pragmatic, I'm a pragmatic person and Nature Conservancy is a pragmatic group. On some of the improvement thinnings in areas that have been previously cut, I mean, it would be my hope that that would pay its way out of the woods. So then you get back to invasive control and other things that Ben's talking about. I mean, I have every intention, you have every intention to try to get that, but I get where you're coming from. I think
what I don't wanna happen is that we spend the money and then we
It's a
need,
forgotten-
need that much, that same amount of money
Right.
to go in and do the work you're
I-
suggesting, otherwise we have no timber forever.
I get what you're
That's all
saying.
I wanna plan it so that we
That whole
can,
plan, though, will kind of give you the picture of where things are going good and you can promote them, because it's not all going to be bad. There's
Yeah.
going to be good stuff you can promote. And then where areas that if you nip it right now in the bud, that, it's not going to be a huge problem down the road. And then there's going to be areas of which you kind of break invasives into several categories. Then there's areas which you just can't control, and all the money in the world won't fix it.
it's gonna be cheaper to do whatever we can at once, rather than have to spend it over 20 years,
Oh, yeah.
inflation.
So-
That's where I'm looking at it.
So,
as
but I
I'm-
guess I say it'd be tough for me to
Warming.
give you a number. I think the philosophy of it, your point, is good. But through the plan process and gathering all that information on the ground, then we want to come back in, obviously, and share, hey, here's what we found, here's, what's going good, there'd be a whole kind of process, or through a committee, whatever, however you want to handle it. Obviously, that assumes that we have a project and a partnership, but.
If you're developing the plan and you find something that needs to be fixed or eradicated out there, can we have anybody do that, or is there only a certain group or entity that would do that under the plan?
I've been
You know what
out
I mean?
there
Like,
with-
can I go out there with a machete and start?
Like, I was out there with Mike Criley,
Right.
and he's like, oh, I can do that, the tree of
That's
heaven.
what I was wondering.
I took my hatchet out and a bottle of glyphosate, which just is hack and squirt, and all the female trees. I'm like, yeah, that's a big, you do that, start knocking back the bigger trees, and you take care of a lot of the problems. So there are things, absolutely, there's
Yeah.
things, particularly when you have public works.
If
And, you
there's
know,
like a clear plan,
Oh.
maybe that could fall underneath the committee
And so-
to get volunteers to go out there and do it and save the borough money on that end, you know
And
what I
some
mean?
of our enrollees, like Hiawatha Hunting and Fishing Club, they're in Northeast PA, they do all the work themselves. They don't hire out anything.
Yeah.
They have a licensed spray guy, somebody who's licensed to spray chemical.
And let me offer, this just hit me, but we've got a scout troop that came to us last month and wants service projects and wants to participate, wants to be involved. And that's right up the scout troop's alley. We've got a local Appalachian Trail group that is very vested in the property, very vested in what goes on
There's a
out
lot.
there, has a lot of interest. They may be able to wrangle a couple volunteers to support that. And
That's
we've
why
got
I'm
the Duncannon Sportsman's Association,
Yeah.
who sees a lot of value. I talked to the president
Oh, yeah.
Saturday night about his excitement that we're finally opening the gate to open
Oh, yeah.
the road for hunting again this year.
Yeah.
So we've got local people, local people, but not in the borough people, that I think are interested and have an interest and have a use and energy and
Yeah.
most importantly, people
Yep.
that could support
Agreed.
those efforts.
And we just hired a land steward in Harrisburg in our office, actually a lady, she was just working in Maine and doing prescribed fire and other things, so she's going to be working a lot in central Pennsylvania, so she would get to know the property too.
Josh, didn't you tell us that most of this invasive control and stuff, especially initially, you guys would do it and along with Ben?
That's what Ben and I were talking about.
So I guess my question is, would we even need to earmark out of the initial proceeds? I mean, I would still think when we get into doing cuts again under the plan, that we would want to use money, and invest back in, just like you buy new seed with your fields. But would we need to commit financially to anything early on as part of the plan, or would that be kind of, that was my impression from when we talked, was that you guys were going to
Our goal from the
help us
beginning
with that.
is to get things lined up and get controls and things done on the property through available, because you're in public access and signing this 10-year agreement, like Ben said, that opens the door to a big funding pot, and that's all, that all has to coincide with developing your plan, and then there'd be a plan to implement the prescriptions. And that's happened. How many acres have we treated at Bethlehem? That's been what, thousands. And that's in the last 2 or 3 or 4 years. And then at Lock Haven, you're initiating.
Yep, just getting started up there, that'll be hundreds of acres.
So it's a well-oiled machine, a process that Ben and his shop, the game commissioner, are really pros at for these cooperators like you all. You might as well, by joining our program, take advantage of that, because you're doing the right thing, having it open to public hunting.
Is that the Lock Haven City Authority you're talking about? You're giving me the plan.
Yep, so they're actually doing some of that work there too, Bill.
It just struck me, you go through decade one, first item, spray all invasive competitive plants, pulp removal, thinning, below pulp.
They generated a good bit of revenue from
And then
those.
different stands,
Yeah.
spray, and it goes on to including deer exposure,
Because they have too many deer in one
Fences,
spot,
yeah.
yeah, they did that.
which sounds expensive.
What was the word?
Deer
Inclusion.
A fence.
exclosure, they call it.
Exclosure. You're not keeping them in, you're excluding them, but, the beauty of that was they
Like
treated
reindeer, like Rudolph?
700 or 800 acres there in those stands, and they netted on junk 400,000 or 500,000 to the positive. But they did put, some resources back into the stands.
Right,
It's not
I
a lie.
understand, I'm just,
Yeah, no.
get a feel if I wanted to see what, and I understand their situations different from ours,
Yep.
and, all that whole stuff.
Yep.
So, there's a lot of, what is meant by pulpwood removal?
That's low grade, like the smaller wood or bad form, and leaving. Basically, that's like if you're 1,000 acres that you're working forest on the watershed here, think of it as a big garden. That's weeding your garden.
So it doesn't have much commercial value then?
Going for paper, not your vineyard.
Right, so it's not, yeah.
It's not much commercial value, but the FSC certification, at least in Lock Haven's case, got them 350% more for stumpage than the average. Because it was FSC certified, a lot of high-end papers and companies want that. But you'll be FSC certified. at no cost.
Right, they're paying.
Right, thanks, Bill. You escaped.
There's one other thing floating around in my legal mind here that I just need to talk about, and that's title. One of the things which we are obliged to do is to give good and marketable title to the easement and that's fine, that's what we should do. The problem is, under normal circumstances, we would enter into the option, get paid for the option, and then a year from now, or 3 years, whenever it's going to be, we would transfer title, they would do a title search, and what if,
So,
there's a problem, okay? Now, I don't want to badmouth Duncannon, but with all the problems that we've run across, I'm very uncomfortable saying we are in a position to give good and marketable title. We need to know that before we spend the $100,000, which they're going to want back, if we can't give good and marketable title. So, I leaned on the Josh's group, and they agreed to pay for the title search, and that's to be done now, okay? So that I know that we can fulfill our obligations under the option agreement. Now, it hasn't been done yet. They've agreed to pay for it. Our office has been in touch with their lawyers, and they're basically, if you were to choose to go through with this, we would commission the title search. You would authorize these to be signed only after the results of the title search came back and we were satisfied. I'm just unsure. You guys have owned this place for quite a long time, and
We know there's gonna be encumbrances and exceptions, it's just
right,
making
you
it
have to accept
acceptable
it.
to the buyer.
Yeah,
Right.
What and marketable title?
good and marketable. As would be insured by a reputable title insurance company, I think is the typical formulation. But anyway, now, it is the case that this isn't somebody buying a house and putting a mortgage on it, okay? And that the Nature Conservancy may accept something, some blots on the title that you might not want to in buying your own house. But we'll cross the bridge when we come to it. I just, like I said, I don't want to get you guys in the position of having to pay back $100,000 a year or two from now, which is going to be a problem. So that's going around, but they have agreed to pay for it there, and they'll eventually get title insurance, which they'll pay for.
Yep.
Okay, but the oddball thing there is that I said I had to do the title search. And that sounds like I'm drumming up business for myself, and I probably am. But I felt it was, number one, important because, well, you weren't paying for it, they were. And, but secondly, it was important for me in reviewing this for you guys to make sure that you're on the right track.
Yeah.
So,
And I explained that to our attorney, and he, 100%, that makes sense.
okay,
You know,
that's fine. Yeah, we talked with them, they're fine, so. But you just needed to know that's kind of an uncertainty there, so.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agreement granting the Nature Conservancy the option to purchase a conservation easement on the watershed lands, payable once we have completed a title search showing good and marketable title by a reputable insurance company and upon final solicitor review.
Second.
Do you want to repeat that?
No. You're assuming I wrote it down.
Pretty good,
Can I just have a copy of it? I didn't get any of it.
Yes, I can get you, but to repeat it, the approval of the agreement granting the Nature Conservancy the option to purchase a conservation easement on the watershed lands, payable once we have completed a title search showing good and marketable title by a reputable insurance company and upon final solicitor review.
And that's as amended, as we've talked about.
with 1 and 3.
Yeah,
something around,
Yeah, that would be part of my review, so.
Oh, okay, I was gonna say, I can amend it if you wish.
No, I won't approve it unless it's.
Okay, the motion's on the table, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if I would I'm on the Revitalization Development Committee, one thing I've been pushing for is the fact we're surrounded by bodies of water with no real access for boaters. Would this have any impact on me pushing for, say, a boat launch?
Water trail, no.
Okay.
Not a direct impact, but the DCNR rep for the area, when he was here for the first site visit, rode with me, and we did talk about passive recreation development and grants and so forth, and he does like the idea of You know, if there was an effort to develop a water trail on the Sherman's Creek, he would definitely be supportive
Prior
of
to
that.
dragging my canoe, having to walk it.
And they do have a lot of grant programs for water access and so
Yeah,
forth too,
specifically
so.
for that, yeah.
Would that would not violate anything in the easement, I think is the important question. If we
Yeah,
wanted
that's what I
to
wanted to-
develop something like that,
Yep.
I mean, I realize we wouldn't be able to build a boathouse and a restaurant and, but
Do you need me to amend? No, I'm just.
I want to clarify what that amendment was. So that'll make what is marked as phase 3 will become phase 1, and will become 573 acres,
Yep.
while phase 3 will become phase 1 will become phase 3 and will be taken down to 510
Yep,
acres.
that's right.
And the dates, corresponding dates also.
Yes, that'd be changed.
Is there any comment from the public? For, or against, or Duncannon? Yes, sir.
Thanks. I just want to sort of reaffirm what many people have said here tonight, that I think this is a really great opportunity for Duncannon Borough, for local residents, for public recreation. This can be a great opportunity for wildlife, watershed protection, and not to mention the fact that the Appalachian Trail is the Appalachian National Scenic Trail. It's a federal park. And so to the extent that we can continue to protect the Appalachian Trail, that's a wonderful thing. So I encourage you to support this. And thank you very much.
Anyone else? Something, this is a major potential action, and I think that, we haven't heard much community response either way. The limited community response we've had has been tonight, has been in support. The loudest opposition since the beginning has been Frank and Roger that I've heard. I've heard very little either way from the community at large. So, I think that it's important that when we're gonna vote on this, that we consider what's in the best interest of our community and whatever our future may hold. Any other discussion? Kathy, you're comfortable in the motion?
Oh, no, not at all.
The essence of the motion by Ms. Young, second by Mr. Adams, is to engage in the option payable after appropriate title search and solicitor review.
I'll get it. There.
All those in favor? Let's
just do a roll call.
Mr. Crothermel.
Yes.
Mr. Epley.
No.
Mr. Adams.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
No.
Mr. Kirkhoff.
Yes.
Ms. Young.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Nace.
Yes.
5-2. That's our numbers.
We're still on Finance Administration Communication, Kristen.
So no, wait, don't we have to do something else?
That's all on your
everything.
list, that's number 7 of 7.
Honestly, don't get too close.
Okay. I'm finished unless someone else has something.
Anything for Christie under Finance Administration Communication? We've got the Parks and Recreation, Mr. Williams.
December 3rd,
Sorry, hold you 1 second. Mr. Bissonnette.
There was one thing that was discussed back here earlier on the budget that I didn't pay attention to was we saw in the last year's budget and everything, the workers' compensation for fire company. It was a question back here, was there a line item for EMS somewhere that we didn't see for workers' compensation? Or was that somehow included under the fire company line item?
Bob, can you-
EMS has its own line item.
Right.
There was nothing in the 2017 budget
I
that
think
showed that.
the amount from the borough's responsibility is very minimal. It's
$500 or
from
$600.
It's from Penn Township. They bill for the portion of the workman's comp that's volunteer based, which is very, very minimal.
Yeah, it's
So
understood that it's minimal.
it might be $50 a month. I don't know that particularly it's in there. If that's a critical issue, we can certainly make sure it occurs there.
I don't know if I saw anything from them in 2017, but if I remember correctly, for 2016, it was $600 and change that we paid out.
Okay, maybe that was that $700 that was just listed as donation to EMS.
It was.
Okay.
It was.
All right, there was just discussion earlier, wanted to bring that up under.
Byron asked me the same question on number. Anything else? Back to Mr. Williams.
On December 3rd at 5 to 7 will be Winterfest held at the town. And that's it, so news.
Are you in need of anything for Winterfest?
A lot of people, a lot of crafts. The letters have been out to the businesses and
Is that coffee place coming? I heard rumor they were coming, like giving out free coffee.
Yes.
That is true, that's not a rumor.
they're the only ones. Parks and Rec will do hot chocolate and cookies. The Cove Mountain Community Theater is performing.
Do $50 contribution or
Okay.
That's it. Santa Claus,
I don't have
He'll
any
be there at
signs to
6.
sell either.
so.
Okay. Anything for Roger under Parks and Recreation?
I have a question. New Year's Eve, I've gotten a couple calls. What time does that typically start?
10.
Okay.
Things really get rolling at midnight.
I heard that they end then.
Anything else for Parks and Recreation? We'll not move on then to Personnel, Legal, and IT. We did meet this evening, as scheduled. The only action item we have is I'd like to make a motion to extend the Public Works, part-time temporary staffing, by 60 additional days, in part due to the, later fall of leaves, and leaf cleanup that started later in the year.
Is it all 4?
Sorry?
Is it 4 temporary employees?
Yes.
It's authorization for 4, that doesn't mean we'll be keeping them all for the full 60 days.
Right.
So be it.
Second.
I just made the motion and Roger.
A third.
That so be it confuses everyone.
Yeah, it does.
I'm
Claim a number, Roger. Claim a number.
I made the motion, and Mr. Williams has made the second, to extend the authorization for temporary part-time employees in the Public Works Department for additional 60 days. Any further discussion? All those in favor give consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I have nothing else under Personnel, Legal, and IT. Does anyone have anything for us? Move on then to Public Safety, Mr. Crockwell.
Public Safety Committee didn't meet this month due to a lack of subject matter. Next meeting will be the first Monday of December 4th at 6 p.m. I did receive one question after the meeting was scheduled, but it's already been addressed with the hydrant testing for High Street. The engineers will let them know when they do that. It'll be commensurate with the line pushing.
Anything for Public Safety for Mr. Crockwell? Move on then to Utilities, Streets, Infrastructure, Mr. Crockwell.
All right, did we do one of these under Fred? Okay. So the first, I'm gonna make a motion that we authorize Panoni to install a monitoring system on Locust Street retaining wall at a cost not to exceed $1,500.
Second.
I'll just note for everybody, the project is we had talked about getting it done sooner rather than later, but this is a much larger scale project than many of us, I think, envisioned at first, because there will essentially be no road. The entire road will be dug up, and this special type of wall has to be put in. It's not just go and build a retaining wall, pave the road. It's a engineering feat, which is why we're gonna do this, so that we can better plan for that, because we're not talking like a simple fix.
And we are searching for grant money. We're investigating the dirt and gravel road program, but we're also looking at others because those grants typically probably are not enough to cover a project this size.
Yeah, we were talking like 250 at the last meeting, I think, at a starting price.
Well, and we are also looking at possibly including some other road improvements in the area to make it all one big project, not just the wall.
We have a motion by Mr. Kirkhoff, a second by Ms. Young, to authorize Panoni up to $1,500 to install a monitoring system on the Locust Street wall. Any further discussion? All those in favor give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right, second motion I have is to approve Henkels and McCoy's proposal to inspect the borough's utility poles at a cost of $10,505.43.
Second.
Third.
We have a motion by Mr. Kirkhoff. I made the second to approve the Henkels and McCoy proposal for $10,505.43.
$5.43.
To create the utility pole inspection program. Any further discussion? All those in favor give consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I'll add to go with that, the committee also talked about some open lines that we are looking at getting done in the upcoming year. No action yet, but that's definitely on our radar. Chris, is there anything you wanted to add other than those two things?
Just that we, also the committee's working on, one of the recommendations in the EIP plan was for us to develop a capital projects plan, kind of a long-range plan. And the Utilities and Street Committee has really taken it to heart. They're working very hard on developing it. So some of the things, for example, we're talking about the wires, we have some lines that are not insulated. They're just open wires, old-fashioned. Whether we fit that into next year in the budget somewhere, if we can find the money to do it, or if it becomes part of this capital plan, those are the types of things that we're looking at. A street paving plan that is not just, okay, we need to fix this street. It's looking at our maintenance and repaving and having a plan 5 years out so that and we'll constantly adjust that every year, but to try to get some of our big projects into a plan so that they're more manageable and we can work at them and chip away at them instead of just saying, well, when we get around to it and when we have the money, we're going to do it. This is more, we put it on the list and we start looking for the money to do it. That doesn't mean we're going to be able to do everything, but it's a lot of work to develop, and I applaud that committee because they are the ones who are really bearing the brunt of that load as far as, because most of the capital projects are utility and street related, so they are putting a lot of effort in on your behalf, so I think it's important for you to know that.
Any update on Mary Street and High Street and the stormwater replacement work that was started but not finished?
Is this?
Mary? Is it Mary Street?
Susan and Martha.
Yes.
Martha's what I was thinking. And I'm glad that Kevin's still here because he could probably provide some comment on that as well. That's something he and I discussed for about 3 years.
I can't provide you an update.
I asked Mike about it last month, and I can't
It's come up a
remember
couple
exactly
times,
what
and
he
I
told
just
me.
can't.
I can give you a little bit of what's occurred. Susan Street, half of it was tarred and chip, half of it was cold patch, the rest of it is still stone and dirt. On High Street, both the line that runs across the riverside of High Street that was dug up and the line that crossed over High Street were originally cold patch. They were tarred and chip, I think last month, Chris, they came through and did that? Right after they painted the curbs, which made
They were doing
black
some
again.
repair work on potholes and so forth. I'm not aware of any large-scale tar and chipping that was done.
They tarred and chipped the entire thing that had been dug up and cold patched 2 years ago and still hadn't been blacktopped yet because the cold patch was beginning to fail.
Right, but patchwork, not,
Yeah, I mean, we're talking
right.
20, 24 inches from the curb, the length of the block, pretty much. And then going down Martha Street, my side, I took care of all the final grading and everything after they replaced that pipe. The 630 High Street side, there is still a hole in that pipe that has created a large sinkhole that people have fallen into. Now they have put a barrier over it so no one else falls into the storm drain pipe. But that is still open and it is actually beginning to undermine the road.
I never had all those details when I brought it up previously, so I'm glad you're here to provide those details. Because I know the conversation that you and I had was, there was some indication that the project was started but not completed because of financial concerns previously.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing's like in front of Charlie Wise's house, halfway down the dress factory, still dirt. Every time it rains, that washes out. Either I push it back in or one of the guys comes up with a skid loader and pushes it all back in to refill the hole. And then the barrier that they put on Martha Street, I think we're gonna end up losing Martha Street right up next to that barrier if something's not done with that one soon, because it's probably about almost 4-inch deflection in the middle of the sinkhole right now.
Well, Kevin, I apologize because when it was communicated to me, I thought they were talking about the storm drain on High Street was the way it was communicated to me. I went out and looked at it and saw that it wasn't, like you had said about the cold patch around it and so forth, but I didn't see any. I was what broken pipe? So I apologize, I didn't have the right
They
location.
actually, someone, I don't know who, but someone came out and put one of those small sawhorse type barriers over the opening, 630, was purchased recently. And had some people there helping them, and actually one of the friends that came over to help them fell into that hole in the storm drain and twisted her ankle pretty severely. And at that point, the solution was we're gonna put a sawhorse over it, which,
That's not a solution. We'll
Which
be
I-
out there tomorrow to take a look at it. I don't know weather-wise what we can do in the winter, but we'll do what we can now.
I just don't wanna see it turn in, Craig knows in front of my house, we had
Absolutely.
sawhorses there for 3 years before they even, fixed the holes that were there. And I don't think Martha Street's gonna last that long.
It had been communicated to me High Street, so I was looking up on High Street at the storm drain up there. I
If
apologize.
you go down Martha, you'll see that, and if you go down Susan, you'll see the dirt and the washout marks. It's too late for blacktop, obviously, but.
But that hole, we can do something, even if it's just covering it with a steel plate so that nobody falls into it.
The same hole, yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else for utility street, thank you, Kevin, anything else for utility streets infrastructure?
No, that is all. Thanks, Kevin.
Next on the agenda, the revitalization development, Mr. Adams.
All right, everybody settle in. Here we go. I have a couple changes I'd like to make to the chicken ordinance. We'll start with the first one, it's probably gonna be the easiest one. It's just in a possible conflict with another existing ordinance on, pages aren't numbered here, so you can 2, 3, 4, 5. So page 6, paragraph 8 at the top. There's a reference here saying that the chicken coop and chicken pen shall be located no closer than 30 feet to a residential structure on an adjacent property. One of our existing ordinance that we have on file right now, 225-6, in that ordinance, under garden structures, there's definition for an aviary.
One aviaries,
Yeah, like basically.
barbecue huts and whatnot.
Yeah, in the definition of aviary, it just says birds. Well, chickens are birds, and under that ordinance, it says 3 feet, and this one's saying 30 feet. So I'm wondering if there's like if they would butt heads
This
anyway.
would specifically repeal that.
Okay, so this would repeal that one, and that one would, okay, so that's all right.
Well, would it, for chickens only, not for,
Yeah.
it would still
Just
allow.
for chickens alone?
Yep.
All right.
I just wanted to make sure, I saw that and wanted to make sure it didn't cause an issue down the
Absolutely.
line.
Yep.
I pointed it out.
Alright, then on page 4, paragraph E, the very last word of the paragraph said, "and purchase are encouraged." I believe that should say required, because everything I've seen and been told by chicken owners is they need those to sleep. And I don't want us to get into it, just to avoid chicken abuse.
What section are you in?
Fourth page. Page 4.
8413E.
Page 4, paragraph E.
Okay. Okay, yeah, no, that was what was in the one that you had sent up.
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah, I'm just asking to change it.
We can
that's
change
all.
it, or require, we're gonna require purchase.
I thought we weren't having setbacks. I thought we were using our.
Existing?
Existing.
Well, that's what that 30, that is the existing from another ordinance that we were using as a reference.
I thought we had gotten rid of the specific setbacks in this during discussion last month.
Yeah.
I thought so. I thought we had said we weren't gonna have specific setbacks included in this. We were just gonna use whatever our.
There's a difference between the setback. A setback refers to distance from your lot lines. This came from the other ordinances that we worked from, but it was a standard in pretty much every one that we looked at did have a distance from neighbors' properties that it also had to be.
You know what I mean? So like me and Craig are neighbors, our property line's in the middle, but I can't if I put my chicken coop right on his property line, I'd still be 30 feet from his house. I'd be 50, 60 feet from his house. You know what I mean? So, because
This is specific to a residential structure.
Right, the house
Property
itself.
line.
This was to address situations like the mayor talked about in his neighborhood where the houses are very close together. And basically, so you would probably have to put it towards the back of your lot or something so that it's to minimize any nuisance or anything to the neighbors, is the reason that was put in. And like I say,
I
that,
literally think he said the mayor clause. I think that's actually what he just said.
we could call it that, I can amend this if you'd like. No, it was, it is a thing that came from, like I say, the ordinances that we worked from, the various different communities that have chicken ordinances that we, look for guidance from.
You're gonna start it.
And that's a number that came from another ordinance. If you think another number is good, that's.
What's the closest structure to your house? That'd be 30 feet.
I mean, I'd have to put it like, would have to be 30 feet from your own house, right?
No, from your.
Any other
from the
neighboring,
From a neighbor's house.
from a neighbor's house.
Any adjacent property.
But you figure those
On
properties
an
on High
adjacent
Street are,
property,
they're
so it's not applying to
they're
your own.
50 feet wide.
It has to be 30 feet from their house,
Right.
right?
I don't,
Not
like,
from
I
there.
don't know.
Your house has a 10-foot setback and the chicken coop or the neighboring property would have a 10-foot setback. So you're already 20 feet away, so you're really just talking 10 feet further than what the setback would require anyhow.
You already have chickens. You already have chickens. Okay, so is that a resolution? You guys feel that's okay that, like it's not 30 feet from the property, it's 30 feet from the structure? Yeah. In any angle.
Residential structure.
Yeah, residential structure, not a shed. where you live.
What if somebody lives in a shed? That's a residence.
Okay,
Doesn't count.
so we're good on that one, everyone? Everyone okay? All right, okay, and on page 3, under 8413, housing of chickens, you'll see in paragraphs B and C, there's reference to the mesh with the spacing between, the mesh for the fencing and everything. It starts off in paragraph B with the 1/2 inch for the windows, I believe that is, windows and vent. But then further down it says for the mesh of the actual construction, it should be 1 inch by 1 inch. And then for the netting, 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch. Now, from what I understand, this netting or this fencing comes in a standard size and it's bigger than the requirements that are in here. It's about 1/2 inch, 1.5 inches by 1 inch is the standard chicken coop size. And I think we should make that as the standard for all of these things, just 1.5 inches.
I would have an issue with that because the stuff I read in researching it all recommended the smaller opening because of predators being able to get in a bigger opening. 1.5 inches is a big opening for like a weasel or.
Well, that's what I was looking at there. That was
Chicken wire, 1.5 up and down, inch.
Well, they make chicken wire in lots of different sizes.
Well, understood, but this is your standard one that any prefab coop's gonna have for the run area.
Yeah, and I saw them I saw it at Tractor Supply, that's what originally drew my attention. The ones they sell on the property there have that size on it, and it's bigger.
And again, I mean, it doesn't matter to me, whatever you want to put in, but we went by recommended standards, and then the mesh actually was a matter that, because there were different standards and different ordinances, I did some research, and the 1/2 inch was what was the recommended, but if you can't get it, then it becomes standard.
I mean, you're gonna pay 4 times as much for 1/2 inch as you are for this.
And the prefab stuff isn't gonna have it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so if somebody goes out and just buys a prefabricated coop thinking they're good,
Right.
it's gonna look like that and it won't be good, and then I'll have to go out and buy more. So I'm just thinking we streamline it, make it all 1.5 inch.
I'm good with the change.
I'm with this route, the standard.
Everybody's okay with that? Okay. And then the big one, after talking to a couple people about the number of birds we were gonna allow, we started with 6. And I thought about it, I did some algebra here today about like how many chickens per day lay eggs, and if 2 die off, how many does it mean? I think a more reasonable number to accommodate people would be 10, because that way they could lose a certain amount of birds with still having now we're not talking about people that are getting for pets. I'm talking about people that are using these in their day-to-day lives for the egg production. And allowing a maximum of up to 10 birds versus 6 doesn't really make too much of a difference in the size of the coops and the impact on noise, on waste. I mean, we're talking up to 10 birds, so everybody's not gonna go to 10. But the main sticking point for me is you cannot buy them smaller than 6. So if we make the total 6, they're gonna have to wait till every bird passes away or dies or gets sick before they have to go out and buy a whole new batch of young chickens, wait till they get old enough to lay eggs.
Well, I don't think that's true though, because even if they have 6, we talked before in one of the 6-month meetings that we've had, that people, if the number is 6, if the number is 10, they're not gonna wait to buy 6 brand new birds and then wait for them to get to where they need to get to have eggs. They're not gonna do it that way. They're gonna probably go out, buy 6, and they're gonna split them amongst other people. You know,
Well, I mean, that possibility is there for people that work with each other, you know,
Right.
but not everyone in this, I mean, honestly, there's only one other person that I know of right now that's interested in this that I would even trust in that scenario.
Right. But I don't think so, even if you raise it to 10, someone's not gonna wait for 6 to die to go out and buy 6 more. You know, they wanna have them in some sort of rotation because of the nature of the birds.
Right, and the point is, with 6, you don't have that opportunity for rotation. You have
just
6.
I think you have
No,
just as
because
much
I'm looking
opportunity.
at the production of the chicken, like right now, let's say you do 3 and 3, 3 are producing, 3 aren't. I wanna give them the option to have just a little bit more production in what you're going to use the chickens for. Now me, like say, I wanna get a chicken, I'm gonna get 1 chicken and walk around the beach, I'm not gonna use it. You know what I mean?
Wait a
So I'm
minute,
just
what's the
saying,
ordinance say about that?
This is applying to people, I think, that are using the more practical use of the birds. And with with the amount of restrictions we put on here, I think upping it to 10 is a reasonable compromise to allow them to be able to utilize the chickens for the.
I just look at it with the last 6 months of work that was done, nowhere did anybody that we saw had an ordinance that had 10 chickens.
I know, I agree.
Everybody
It doesn't mean we have to do the same thing as everybody else.
I agree, but one person comes in and says, I think 10 is the number, and after 6 months, when we looked at 4 to 6 and 10 or 12 other ordinances that said 4 to 6 is the number, now
There
we're
was
at
some
6.
higher ones though. There was, I mean, I did see sporadic higher numbers, so not everybody followed the same track.
Right.
And surprisingly, the higher numbers were in cities for some reason. I would think they would be in
That
rural
was
towns,
crazy.
but they were in cities. So,
Have you reviewed this bill? Yeah. So, we're giving a permit out, right?
A residential chicken permit.
Correct. And we can
gonna write it
revoke
with a
that
feather
for
quill?
any number of reasons.
Yes, it's
At any
excellent.
time.
If it's obtained by fraud, it's null and void, yes.
Split the difference, make it 8.
Only if the permits are written with a quill pen.
I've been
I'd like to go with 10, but
Yeah,
if there's too much pushback and it's
Quilt
gonna
pen.
keep us here, we'll have to compromise on something. So, I mean, does everybody think 10 is too much on the council?
Nope, I think 10 is perfect. I've lost at least 25 hours of my life dealing with chickens, and I would love to put it to roost.
Okay. All right,
I think if we pass this, Chris will get everybody chicken sandwiches.
so.
Yes, I am.
So we can move the number to 10, and then
You can move it to 10, and it can go to a vote, and it either passes or it doesn't.
can we vote on the ordinance with the proposed
We have to vote
changes? Or do we have to change it first?
present it, advertise it.
I need to look at the advertising, just give me a second.
Does
Yeah, I
it-
advertised just that it would have the number and type of chicken allowed. So I think this would be considered a minor change, that you could adopt this here tonight, because otherwise Christie will throw things at me.
Just eggs.
Without
If you're lucky, they won't be rotten.
without re-advertising.
They'll be fresh.
So the change is gonna be 10 chickens allowed, right?
Yes.
Okay, and we are gonna change all wire mesh to 1.5 by 1.5.
Yes.
No matter where it's at, on the
Yes.
pen, on the doors, on the windows, okay.
It's okay.
And we're okay with the 30 feet distance, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And to require the roof.
Oh, that's right, I forgot.
Yes. I forgot about that.
The roosts are, or the perches are required.
Sorry.
Okay, so, I guess I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance number 408 of
Nah.
2017.
Are we adopting it or advertising it?
It's already been.
This has been advertised, you can adopt
We can
it.
adopt it.
You can put this
Oh,
puppy to
please
bed.
let me second it, Daryl.
Daryl already, it's okay, because I tried to.
I withdraw my second.
Second!
Second and a half.
The motion by Mr. Adams, second by Ms. Young. Any commentary from the audience here tonight?
Jim Ryan, I don't know what you're thinking, but you can just put a chicken sandwich in it.
Motion by Mr. Adams, second by Ms. Young to adopt ordinance number 408 of 2017 with the discussed changes. All those in favor give their consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yay, nay.
Okay, let's do a roll call.
Oh my gosh, you people.
Unanimous. I'm shaking crazy.
Mr. Crothermouth.
Yes.
Mr. Epley.
No.
Mr. Adams.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
No.
Mr. Kirkhoff.
Yes.
Ms. Young. Mr. Nays.
Yes.
5-2.
I was gonna, motion carries. My comment was going to be, and I forgot to make it, was my biggest concern with this whole thing is enforcement. And, you know, we've got a 7, 8 page ordinance that we're now gonna put on the office and try to deal with.
My one rebuttal to that is, now that the ordinance is passed, people have had chickens in this borough for about 10+ years and it hasn't impacted anything until they got loose down there. And that's why this, I felt, needed to be passed, because it was already happening.
Right.
And we live in Perry County for God's sake. So, I'm not saying it against you, I'm just saying that was my
But I
problem.
think the permitting,
I'd like
that's
to
why I
make a
meant
motion to
it
abolish
first.
the speed limit in the borough.
It's either you can have it or you can't with permit, so a lot of the weeding out can be done with just a permit. By going out and saying, you don't have a permit, you can't have it.
I guess part of me would almost have preferred that there be no regulation. Just, if you want to check the town, then do what you're gonna do, but I understand at the same time that we need to.
I think maybe maybe that eventually you could deregulate.
I will not be on council when we deregulate chickens.
I just want to say I agree with the president right here. We're adding more to the borough staff all the time, and you look at the length of this regulation here, and that's why I voted no. I mean, this thing is just a total disaster, line by line, of do this, do that, to raise a couple of chickens. But I don't think that would have made any difference in the vote anyway, so I didn't say it.
I think it's probably the best compromise we can do between allowing it free will and not allowing it at all. So we got halfway from not allowing it at all to, you know, allowing with some restrictions. Anything else on the revitalization development?
Do you have a question, John?
I was just gonna, it was just a joke, I was gonna say, if somebody loses a hen, are they allowed to put posters up all?
Get out of here! Only if they use FSC certified paper to print them on.
Only if you promise I'll get phone calls and emails from everybody outside of Duncannon.
That's all for revitalization and development.
Run it up to corporate.
We can arrange it.
Run it up to corporate.
Does anyone else have anything for revitalization
That was the
development?
best one. Somebody said they were gonna call my corporate.
Move to unfinished business. I have 2 items. Chris, do you have any update on, Mr. Grogan brought up some concerns a couple months in a row about stainless steel shutoffs that were purchased and not needed, and made some accusations last month.
Yes, I wish Greg was still here because
I'd like to have that for the record.
Those were purchased because we were trying to comply, get everything ready, expecting DEP to come for a water inspection, and that was on their 2014 report and had never been done. Subsequent to that, because of the issues that have arisen with the mixed building and well 1, and what we talked about here tonight, they were not installed yet. They will be used. Greg tells me he plans they will be used in the new building for well 1 and also in the new well and booster pump in that area. So that's why they were not installed, because this project changes those. And DEP is not requiring them on the old stuff at this point.
Thank you for that clarification. I was concerned as well. He made some comments that, you know, they don't really have a market because they're so specialized, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, if we spent thousands of dollars, or whatever we spent on them to get them, and we weren't going to use them, I had, you know, some concern about that. But if we're going to use them, then.
At the utilities meeting, we talked about it and talked with Greg and said, either let's find a way to use them, or let's see if we can find someone that could use them.
But he felt certain we're gonna use them.
He's pretty sure that we can use them in some way with that, what's going on.
So they were bought for one project, not used and they're gonna be reallocated for another project.
Yeah, we're hoping to reallocate, and I think we were all saying pretty much reallocate them wherever we can to use them, or get rid of them. I mean,
The other item I have, and I have given this some consideration, and I don't wanna make a motion or take any action tonight, and maybe this is new business. But I did mention at the beginning of the meeting that our now former mayor passed last month. And I think a lot of people knew Jack and had worked with Jack in a variety of fashions. He was on council for 2 or so terms and was mayor for 2.5 years of his 4-year term. I'd like to have the council consider and come back for action at next month's meeting, unless we need an ordinance, in which case we won't be able to do anything at next month's meeting, naming something for Mr. Conrad. Whether it's the band shell, whether it's a park, whether it's the office, whether it's this hall, whether it's Hickory Street. In his honor and his recognition, I don't think there were many people that, I go to the borough Facebook page and I see a review about lousy customer service and 1 star, and it irritates me every time. And I think that, a lot of times we concentrate as a council and as a community on some of the negatives that are inherent in any government at any level. We have not, and I will say I have not, done everything right for a lot of years. Jack's been a pain in my butt on many, many times. And I think everyone at this table will probably agree to that.
Amen.
However, Jack's heart and soul were in this town. He loved everyone in it and everything that went on in this town. I would like to, offer, if anyone has a better suggestion or a suggestion that we discuss that and move that forward in December in Jack's honor. That's all I have under unfinished business. Does anyone else have anything under unfinished business?
Yeah, I can bring up a comment. Wagner Drees, our newly appointed auditing firm, they'll be coming on site to begin the 2016 audit on Thursday, November 30th.
Awesome. That's good news. Anything else under unfinished business? Any new business? Any public comment?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.